Hi, Chair. Just before the meeting starts, could I extend my apologies, please?
Any members of the public viewing at home to this evening's council meeting, please be seated. There is no fire drill planned for this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please make your way from the chamber using either of the fire escapes to my right or via the stairwell that leads off from the lobby outside the chamber. Please can I also ask you to ensure your mobile phones are switched off or on silent. Ms Willis, may I please have the apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Leanne McIntyre, Councillor Emma Jane McGrath, Councillor Sashi Marvaganam and Councillor Liz Noble, and I believe Councillor Wheeler is joining virtually.
Moving on to agenda item 2, I propose that the minutes of the meetings of the Council held on 6th of May and 14th of May 2025 be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second that motion.
Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do I have any members that have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests to declare in relation to the matters which are to be considered at this meeting? Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm referenced in motion that's been brought this evening.
Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor. Perhaps I can make a blanket declaration of interest on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group, which, as far as I understand, is still under potential legal action from one of the participants in today's meeting. So I think we had that at a previous meeting. It might just be sensible if I do it as a single thing. And then secondly, my family member may or may not be in receipt of PIP. So similar to Councillor Garrett, I'm not clear. So in the interest of transparency, I should declare that as possible.
Thank you, Councillor McGrath. Agenda item 4. I'm advised that 3 questions have been received from members of the public under Council Procedure Rule 10. Ms Fard, would you like to come to the microphone and read out your first question, please?
Thank you. At a previous council meeting regarding sale of Deepcut car park, the leader of the council said that this council wanted community assets to remain in community hands. Deepcut car park was a community asset, and yet the council's decision to sell it meant that the local community is permanently losing this asset where it was much needed. What guarantees and specific procedures will the council introduce to ensure disposal of other community assets will result in community assets remaining in community hands, even if offers received by the council would be lower than red book value of those assets or less competitive than other offers? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hard. I have been advised that the Leader of the Council, Councillor Sean MacDonald, will respond to the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I do so, in the interest of due process, could I just register the fact that I think there are a number of parish councillors here, and I don't know whether in relation to the CGR proposal they should be declaring interests or not. Could we just have some guidance on that? Thank you.
Ms Boateng will just respond to you.
Thank you, Mayor. If there is a declaration to be made, it will be a non-pecuniary one, so they can make that declaration but then still fully participate. Thank you. Yes, sorry, just to be clear, just so on that basis, those members can now. Thank you.
Councillor White, would you like to speak first?
I'm a parish councillor with Wimbledon Parish Council, so just declare an interest.
I'm also Wimbledon Parish Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've also got the honour of being a parish councillor. That's a non-pecuniary declaration.
Councillor Victoria Wheeler.
I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest, as also I'm a parish councillor.
Councillor MacDonald. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Parish Councillor for Chobham.
Thank you for your patience there, Mayor. Let me just get myself organised. Again, thank you, Ms Fudd, for your question. Firstly, I'm not familiar with having made this statement, and I note the questioner does not specifically quote me or add details of the meeting with date and timestamp. I would welcome this being provided for the public record. Secondly, there is no definition of a community asset, so perhaps you would wish to consider clarifying this as part of any supplementary question. Our asset disposals are carried out in accordance with the Council's acquisition and disposal strategy and relevant local government legislation. Wood End Car Park is a site which will be replaced by St Barbara's Car Park very shortly, and therefore it was determined that it should be brought forward for disposal. It seems that the fundamental issue here is the outcome of the bidding process and the fact that a business you have been appointed to represent in a professional capacity and a Conservative councillor has a commercial relationship was unsuccessful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Ms Fard, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes. The council had a number of offers. And at the executive, a decision was made to sell the asset, and one of the offers was accepted. What guidance was given by the executive to those who made decisions regarding selecting the best value offer when they were considering whether or not to accept the car park and other offers?
Thank you, Ms Fard. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to respond?
Thank you. In terms of the process that's followed, it is for the officers to evaluate the different bids and to advise the executive on what best value is, and that's what was done in the paper. There was an extensive discussion at executive around it, and I have no further comment to make on that matter.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Moving on to question 2. Yeah. Ms Fard, would you like to read out your second question?
Sure. Thank you. The council has claimed that real estate assets need to be sold to reduce its debt to survive, and that there is an £8 million gap in the finances. The council's budget of 2023-24 had miscalculated the interest payable on the debts by over £3 million. And for the 2024-25, this was by over £4 million per year. The council had also recently undervalued its income and its portfolio investment of, my understanding is of over £25 million, but I may be mistaken. And the interest rate was 0.5%, where we understand that interest rates are significantly more than that. Shouldn't the council first undertake internal reviews, revise its budget, and introduce governance improvement before permanently selling important community and infrastructure assets based on budgets which need to be reviewed? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Fard. I've been advised that Councillor MacDonald will respond to this. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Following the executive decision in November 2023 to invest in and build the capabilities of the finance team in September 2024, at the ASR committee, officers reported the budget for interest receivable and interest payable was understated for 2024-25. Following detailed review, this was found to have been the same for the previous 7 years, but dramatically out for the last 3 years as interest rates rose. Budget assumptions had remained unchanged. The finance team have now introduced detailed cash flow forecasting and projections, which were used in the quarterly reporting to councillors and in the preparation of the medium-term financial strategy approved by committee in February. This first step, as referred to in the question, has been undertaken, and the budgets have been revised. The projections used for the 2025-26 budget will now be updated following the preparation of the 2024-25 Statement of Accounts and the reprofiling of the capital programme. And these projections will form part of the monitoring undertaken and presented to councillors during 2025-26. We can confirm that the council's investment portfolio is not £25, but 11.1 million at the 31st of March 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Ms Fard, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you. So I'm asking the next question about the timing of the disposal of assets in light of the budget. And we all know that unitary elections will be held in May 2026. My understanding is that shadow local authority will be formed soon after, and that there will be a total handover in April 2027. Yes, there is a question. And the question is, so I'm just giving background for people who are going to listen. The question is, at which point will this council be required to double-check whether or not it can dispose of real estate assets with the central government before the May 2026 election and or before the total handover in April 2027? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like an officer's view whether that was an appropriate question linked to the first item that was mentioned. And then number two, I think there were multiple questions in there which the Constitution doesn't allow. This public questioner, has been informed of the rules of the Constitution previously, has repeatedly asked multiple questions, and so I don't think gets the benefit of the doubt anymore.
I think Ms Boateng will respond to you just for the moment, just to clarify the points of the questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We've considered the points that you've put forward, and we think that it is relevant to your original question. So we think that it meets the requirements of the Constitution. However, you did appear to ask multiple questions there. So if you could narrow your question to one, please. Thank you.
Just on a point of order, Madam Mayor. I am just going to press the monitoring officer on that advice. The question, as set out on the agenda paper, was regarding to budgets. The supplementary question was then about elections. how is this a relevant question, a relevant supplementary question to the original question asked?
Thank you, Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Mayor. I would go back to the question and ask if she could narrow it down, and then we can assess whether or not it meets the criteria, because it was quite a long question and multiple questions. So I think if you narrow it to one question, that should meet the requirements of the Constitution.
Just as a point of order, is it going to be okay for anyone to go back if they're not quite right in their questioning, even written questions, and have another bite of the cherry? And how long could we be here tonight until we get to a question that's suitable? An inappropriate question has been asked. Presumably at this point we should be moving on.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may respond to that. I was asked to clarify what my interpretation as monitoring officer was to, and I've given that determination. So I think we should allow the member of the public to rephrase the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3, then. Ms. White, could you just narrow it down to one question? Thank you very much. Thank you.
At which point will this council be required to double check whether or not it can dispose of real estate assets with the central government before the total handover in April 2027? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fard. Thank you. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mayor. We don't know. None of what you said has been confirmed by the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fard. Would you like to ask the third question?
Thank you. When Deep Cut Car Park was sold, the executive had not seen detailed usage data of the car park, and scrutiny committee questions, such as whether an offer to retain the site as a community car park would be binding in perpetuity, were asked far too late. If the council continues selling real estate assets valued at £25,000 or less, what steps will it take to ensure only genuinely surplus assets are considered, and that all negotiations are guided by up-to-date community needs, proper and thorough councillor input, and equalities considerations, and also ensuring the executive receives full, accurate information to assess long-term value to the public beyond short-term financial gain before decisions are made regarding sale of assets? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fard. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to respond?
I would, thank you. Before I get into my answer, can I just make members aware that the questioner has changed the question. She just said £25,000 or more, as the record will show. That's not what the question said. It said 25,000 or less. So I will answer the question that was given in writing as per the Constitution by the given deadlines. I don't think it's incumbent on me to respond to a question that's been changed, unless the monitoring officer sees it differently. No, thank you. I must correct the inaccuracies in your statement. Deep Cut Car Park hasn't been sold. It is under offer with officers currently finalising the terms of sale. The potential sale of the car park was discussed at length at several working group meetings prior to executive approval of the sale, which is attended by a cross-party group of members, and as such, proper and thorough councillor input was given. Officer input into historic and current usage was made available to councillors. As you are fully aware, the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee considered the call-in of the decision made by the Executive and, subject to two informatives, agreed the decision of the Executive. The Council will continue to consider officer proposals for the sale of surplus assets through the Property and Economic Working Group. The portfolio holder will also consult with ward councillors prior to marketing. Decisions will continue to be made in accordance with the Constitution, and despite your previous incorrect assertions, are made in a lawful manner. Equalities considerations form part of every executive decision, and there is a section on this on the officer recommendation reports to executive. The Council has no specific strategy to sell assets below 25,000, as discounting transactional costs such as officer time and legal fees it would be of marginal benefits to our financial position. Selected opportunities to reduce ongoing operational costs and risks, such as the rear of London Road site, will be taken. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Ms Farb, would you just like to ask one supplementary question?
Of course, thank you. So I correct myself and I ask this question. What is the council's strategy to sell assets over £25,000?
Thank you, Ms Farb. Thank you. Councillor MacDonald, would you like to answer?
Mayor, I'd just like a small consultation with my colleague for Economic and Development. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Mayor, and members as well. I'd like to refer the questioner to the statement that was given in response to a question at a previous full council. I think we gave a comprehensive answer to that question previously. I don't see the need to repeat it here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Thank you. So, item number 5, my announcements. I intend to be brief, as we have a full agenda this evening. My 63 days as Mayor have been wonderful, varied and rewarding, meeting so many amazing people within our borough. In that time, I have conducted 33 engagements and have been well supported by my deputy. I particularly enjoyed visiting a number of primary schools during their community week, sharing information about councillor duties and being Mayor. During their questions, I hopefully reassured them that despite my uniform, I am not actually a pirate. I would like to thank all members who were able to come to the Armed Forces flag raising last month. And just to remind you all, we have another to commemorate 80 years since VJ Day on the 15th of August. And I look forward to seeing as many of you there as possible at that event. Thank you. So moving on to the item number 6, the leaders' announcements. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'll get my papers organised. Busy night. Wrong one. Should we go again? Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I want to highlight the successes which are detailed in the recently scrutinised and approved 2024-2025 end-of-year performance and outturn report. The report highlights key achievements and successes delivered against last year's annual plan, of which 85% of objectives were completed, with another 13% substantially in progress. This is set against the context of the delivery of an ambitious transformation programme, along with resources being stretched further, contending with the proposed changes to the structure of local government in Surrey. Key achievements include refurbished playgrounds in Frimley, Lightwater and Mitchett, bin recycling upgrades, adding 17,000 litres of capacity, and the submission of the local plan. Cultural and leisure services also performed well, with 891,000 visits to places Leisure Camberley and Camberley Theatre achieving a 72% average attendance. The council supported vulnerable residents with nearly 39,000 meals at home and over 1,400 social prescribing referrals, double the original target. Regeneration efforts in Camberley secured over 1 million through the Brownfield Land Remediation Fund for the London Road block demolition, which commences very shortly. Service performance continues to excel, with 96% of major planning applications processed within the designated timeframe and 99% of environmental health complaints addressed within 5 days. These successes show the resolve of everyone here at Surrey Heath, who continue to work diligently and maintain high standards despite great challenges, reflecting our commitment to service delivery for residents. No one more so than our Chief Executive, Nick Stevens, who leads by example from the front with his passionate public service values. Thank you, Nick. Thank you also to all the officers across all departments for delivering such a strong result, and Miss Bainbridge and team for pulling the reporting all together. Members, turning to the Council's finances. Financially, the Council ended the last municipal year with an 8.7 million overspend, lower than expected, noting the officers' efforts made to deliver 400,000 of transformational savings in the second half of the year. Investment income had a positive variance against target, and we benefited from a one-off rental accounting adjustment, adding 1.3 million. Reserves closed at 22.2 million, indicating we now have some buffer to complete 2026-27 municipal year, albeit without an understanding of the LGR costs coming our way, other uncontrollable headwinds, or indeed what the external auditors might suggest we change. Lastly, the unaudited statement of accounts for 2024-25 is now published and will be subject to external auditor review. Congratulations to the finance team for their diligent, professional and timely work. Members, it feels as though since last winter no leader's announcement is complete without reference to local government reorganisation. You will be aware that the government is currently consulting to support its deliberations between a 2 or 3 unitary model for Surrey. Officers and I are busy promoting the consultation through all of our channels, alongside a dedicated and very well attended business briefing this morning and a wider stakeholder briefing scheduled for next week. It is incumbent on all of us here in the Chamber to promote this consultation, encouraging everyone to share their views. This is the biggest change to local government in Surrey for 50 years. Whatever your views, please make sure you respond personally and encourage your networks to do so as well. The timetables for local government reorganisation in Surrey are ludicrously tight, and this may require some of our own resources to be redeployed through secondments, either internally or into the central PMO team, Project Management Office team, or indeed other transition arrangements, all of which is subject to policy development at the moment across the county. It is also likely to require changes and additions to our own municipal calendar, and I would ask members' understanding as we try to optimise the calendar to minimise impact on members and officers overall, whilst respecting your privileges. I have requested that Chief Executive diarise member briefings at key points during the LGR process to ensure we are all regularly updated on LGR as it progresses, the first of which, covering governance aspects, is almost ready to go. And I think the question, do we do it now or do we do it in September? One for another day. Members, I had little in common with Michael Gove, apart from residing for a time in the Torry area of Aberdeen, and probably did more economically for the impoverished area in my time living and working there than he did over the decades. However, I recall a statement he made suggesting local councils should stay out of international fairs, which I agreed with him on. However, members, we are all citizens of the planet, and in the same way we support global efforts towards net zero to protect the global climate, we have state responsibilities to call out breaches of international human rights, particularly in the range of active conflicts across Europe, the Middle East and Africa. International law is clear about the obligations of participants in conflicts and the rights of non-combatants. We must not forget the lessons of the past, when political blind-eye approaches were taken and what human misery followed. As signatory to the relevant UN conventions, the UK has duties to prevent harm to those without a voice. I will therefore be writing to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office Secretary of State, as leader of the Council, to ask for the government to redouble its efforts in restoring the rule of international law and to support non-combatants in any way it can across all these conflicts, and to hold participants to account at group and individual level now and in the years to come. I would be happy to share the letter in advance, which will take no sides apart from those in the crossfire, and would welcome the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and group leaders adding their name. Members, there is only one training recognition to report at this Council, but it neatly highlights the investment made into our finance team, which of course did pop up in public questions earlier. Many congratulations to our Section 151 officer, Mrs. Radford, who has successfully completed the CITFA CFO Leadership Academy 2024. I know personally myself, Councillor McIntyre and the entire executive are very grateful for her insights into the numbers, her professional diligence and keeping us suitably away from, and I quote, the techie stuff, by dumbing it down for us all. Lastly, I want to thank Mr Chinner, Head of Built Environment and Regulation, for his professional service to the Council, particularly in all things planning related, and wish him and his family the very best for their move into Bedfordshire and the new challenges his role will bring. Your advice will be much missed by all of us, Gavin. Congratulations to Kieran Barker on his promotion, who will be transitioning into Gavin's role shortly, with support from the CEO on some aspects for an extended period of time. I trust Kieran can rely on all of us to help and not to hinder as he settles in. Thank you, Mayor.
Moving on to agenda item 7, executive committees and other bodies. Executive minutes and recommendations. Can I have a proposer for the executive minutes and the recommendation at minutes 6/E? Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose the minutes as documented.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second that.
Are you happy to receive these minutes? Planning Applications Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Planning Application Committee minutes?
Hello, Mayor. I'm happy to propose those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Mahoney. Do you have a seconder?
Willie Cliff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes? Councillor Garrett.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose the minutes of the Performance and Finance Committee.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second the minutes of the 13th of May and the 2nd of June, 12th of June.
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Licensing Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Licensing Committee minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose the minutes of the Licensing Committee on the 11th of June.
Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Employment Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Employment Committee minutes?
Mayor, I'm happy to propose the Employment Committee minutes for the meeting on the 10th of July. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you.
I'm happy to second those minutes. Thank you, Mayor.
Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Joint Staff Consultative Group. Can I have a proposer for the notes of the Joint Staff Consultative Group?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose the notes from the meeting of the Joint Staff Consultative Group held on the 26th of June 2025.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to second those.
Thank you. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes, these notes? Thank you. Item 8, motions. I would like to ask Councillor Richard Wilson to move the motion in the agenda. Councillor Wilson, I invite you to speak on the motion once it has been seconded.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion in my name on the agenda and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second Councillor Richard's proposal, and I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Perrott. Would you like, Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak on your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. We were promised change. After years of Conservative misrule, years that pushed thousands into hardship, eroded public trust and stripped away dignity, we were told that a new government would bring compassion, fairness and renewal. But what we've seen instead is betrayal. Because the proposed new Universal Credit and Personal Independence Payment Bill, Labour's bill, would have pushed an estimated 250,000 people into poverty. It is now just called the Universal Credit Bill, after MPs forced the government to postpone changes to PIP. It will still hit people with disabilities, those with long-term health conditions, and the very individuals that a decent society should support, not punish. It creates a two-tier welfare system, one in which your date of diagnosis determines your level of support. And it leaves the threat of future cuts to PIP hanging over thousands of people awaiting the TIMS review. Tightening eligibility criteria for PIP, as the government clearly intends, would also see many carers lose the carers allowance too. Let's be clear, this isn't tough love. It's quiet cruelty dressed up as reform. The government's own impact assessment admits that tens of thousands of people with disabilities will lose out. And let's not forget, these are people already managing complex needs, trying to stay afloat in a system riddled with delays, uncertainty and suspicion. Yes, Labour has dropped some of the most extreme ideas inherited from the Conservatives, such as completely abolishing personal independence payment. However, the bill as it stands still cuts the health component of universal credit by nearly 50%, from £97 to just £50 per week. The government intends to remove the support completely from under 22-year-olds. People who are eligible for this have conditions or disabilities which prevent them from performing work-related activities, like moving around unaided, picking up things, speaking, understanding communications, continence, being aware of hazards, and social engagement. Having a disability can significantly increase living costs. On average, disabled households need an extra £975 to £1,095 per month to maintain the same standard of living as non-disabled households. This disability price tag can vary significantly based on the nature of the disability and individual circumstances. This includes the cost of mobility aids, medications, adaptations to homes, extra transport, energy for additional heating or cooling or to power medical equipment, specialist support and dietary requirements. And I want to be very clear, this isn't some theoretical national debate. This will hit people in Surrey Heath, in our wards. It will hit residents struggling with long-term illness, mental health conditions, disabilities and chronic pain. It will hit carers, single parents, and people already fighting to stay afloat in a cost of living crisis. Why is the Labour government attempting to cut support from these people who need it the most? Now, they'll say, we need to make savings. The public finances are tight. I don't deny that. After Liz Truss crashed the economy, savings have to be made. But what are the values behind the savings? Because the truth is, this is a false economy. Cutting support doesn't reduce need. It shifts it to food banks, to A&E, to unpaid carers, and to already overstretched local services. And who picks up the bill? We do. Our communities do. And we all know who's going to call us when the cuts arrive. It's going to be the mum in Windlesham whose child is suddenly denied mobility support. It's going to be the man in Bagshot who's too anxious to leave the house, now told to attend job interviews or lose his income. It's going to be the carer in Chobham writing yet another letter asking for the dignity their partner deserves. They won't be calling the DWP, they'll be calling us. Reform doesn't have to mean cuts, it can mean compassion. It can mean fixing the work capability assessment and not punishing people for failing it. It can mean ending the culture of disbelief in the benefit system. It can mean helping people into work where they can work and supporting them with dignity where they cannot. If we want a society that values every person, not just the able-bodied, not just the well-connected, we must oppose these cuts. Mayor, I know this chamber isn't always the place for national debates, but this isn't abstract. These proposals will cut support from real people in our communities, and we have a duty as their local representatives to speak up, to show Westminster that Surrey Heath will not be silent when our residents are at risk. So I urge colleagues from across the chamber, support this motion opposing the cuts, and be ready when our residents come to us to stand beside them. Because the choice before us is not just about money, it's about values. And I, for one, believe a decent society protects the vulnerable. It does not punish them. It lifts people up. It does not push them further down. Let's stand for that society. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Tong-Perrott, would you like to speak on this motion?
Thank you. I'd like to say that you've heard all the facts and the research that's been done meticulously by Councillor Wilson, and thus I'll not waste time to reiterate anything that he said. Instead, I look to our fellow councillors to look into their constituents, to look at their ward, their residents, their neighbours, and think not with just the cash machines, but with their heads and their hearts. It's not easy living with a disability as it is. It is not easy also taking care of someone who is disabled. My own late mother-in-law had Parkinson's, and she had needed full-time care. And to take that away from someone in her 70s had been having all these care from a full-time carer in my father-in-law, it's cruel. It's very cruel. And as I said, my speech will not be long. I'd like to just end it by quoting from Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, that you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his or her skin and walk around in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tong-Perrott. I would like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Please can I ask that if you are intending to move an amendment, you make this clear so I can invite another councillor to second this amendment. If an amendment is seconded, you should only debate the content of the amendment until a vote is taken on the proposed amendment. Members, could I please now invite a debate on the motion? Yeah. Councillor. Yes, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. For the avoidance of doubt, I will be proposing an amendment. So shall I get a seconder to second that amendment now? I have circulated it to the Monitoring Officer, Democratic Services, and to every councillor should now have it in their inbox as well. Yeah, hopefully Councillor Rowlands will second what I've sent, and then I'll explain it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to second the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor.
The amendment,
Rowlands.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening I'm proposing an amendment to the motion, one that I believe helps provide some balance, reassurance and honesty on a subject that's understandably very difficult and has raised a lot of concern. It's true that many people in our borough rely on personal independence payment or other forms of support to help them live with dignity and independence. So when changes are discussed, it's not just political, it's personal. People feel anxious, they feel unsure about what's happening, and they want the facts. So I've circulated my amendment. The first thing to say is it includes a new Part 4. And the thing to say is at this point there are no confirmed changes to PIP eligibility. Instead, there's a review happening led by Sir Stephen Timms, the Minister for Social Security and Disability. And I actually interned for Sir Stephen for some time, and I know he has such a deep knowledge of welfare issues and of people suffering in poverty. So this amendment makes clear that reforms will only be considered after a review is complete, and that no decisions have been made as of yet. And I think that's really important to include in this motion, to make sure we're not spreading potential misinformation. Consider some difficult decisions, especially the fact that, as Councillor Wilson alluded to, we've suffered the last 14 years of mismanagement, not just by Conservative governments, but Liberal Democrat governments as well. Councillor Wilson might forget because he was a Labour member, I think, during the time when the Lib Dems were in government. And as a result of that government, they presided over low growth, falling living standards, cuts to numerous welfare benefits through the Welfare Act 2012, cuts to child benefit, cuts to housing benefit, cuts to disability living allowance, and they left the new incoming Labour government with a huge fiscal black hole that Labour's had to fill. And I think, just on that fiscal black hole, I just want to address potentially the last point in my amendment, which is to call on the council to write to Al Pinkerton MP. Because since being elected, I can't think of a single positive progressive taxation measure that Al Pinkerton's supported. Obviously, if you want to have a well-funded welfare state and you want to have benefits paid for, especially benefits to disabled people, you need to raise the money to do so. Al Pinkerton MP has refused to put VAT on private schools. Don't know why, maybe he thinks it will cost him a few votes in this constituency. He's refused to support increases to capital gains tax, which primarily generate revenue from wealthier people. He's refused to support increases of national insurance on larger businesses who can afford to pay more. So he needs to be a bit more of a serious politician. If the Liberal Democrats want to support, obviously, funding things like PIP, they need to say where they get the money from. And if it's not from taxing private schools, I don't know where they get the money from. In terms of some other changes, obviously, I've just deleted sections of this motion which are not relevant at this time because, again, we don't know what's happening with PIP. And I've included a new clause again to mention some of the positive work that Labour's doing, including the first time that there's ever going to be a permanent rise above inflation in the Universal Credit Standard Allowance, worth £725 in cash to nearly 4 million households, many of which will be in Surrey Heath. So this is progressing through Parliament. This is a great increase to out-of-work support, and that's why I think it's worth including in this amendment as well. So I think that's summarised everything in terms of my amendment. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Can I ask Councillor Rowlands if he wishes to speak on the amendment?
Yes, I'd like to support those comments and talk about the virtues of PIP and what it's actually done. But it's not set an aspect. It obviously has been brought in and needs changes. And I would point out that the party in power has seriously looked at it. There's been a very active debate about the purposes and direction of PIP. And obviously the result of that in Parliament is that there's, as the previous speaker said, it's seriously being examined and looked at. And its objectives, which are still very pertinent, are still being followed. So I think that there's a case to say that this is a precipitate motion, that there is a large review taking place about the virtues of PIP and how it's going to operate, and looking at its virtues and how it more effectively works in the current situation. It obviously has been in operation for some time and it needs to be re-examined. And there's a shortage of general revenue for social security and support for these families which have been identified. And as people say, it's not something that's easily handed out to beneficiaries. It's very carefully looked at. If you talk to some people who are recipients of it, it took a lot of time and effort to secure PIP from the DHSS. So it's something that's with us, and it needs to be re-examined. And in this time of shortened money, it's important that it continues, but in a more effective way. And that's the basis of the debate that the Labour Party are carrying out at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. I now invite members to debate on the amended motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very disappointing amendment. It tries to take a motion which shows that this council would oppose cuts to disability benefits and turns it into one which is okay with cuts to disability benefits. And it tries to rewrite history because the Labour government did propose to cut PIP and universal credit by £5.5 billion. That would be thousands of pounds a year for affected families. These cuts were frightening, they caused anxiety, and the anxiety is still there because the Timms review is going to come back with similar sorts of proposals. And it was Timms who came up with the four-point criteria for being eligible for PIP. So this would take PIP away from people who are unable to wash themselves properly. This is what the Labour government intends to do. And it would have done it if it hadn't been forced under pressure to make concessions. And it was forced by Liberal Democrat MPs and Labour backbench MPs. And if constituencies like Surrey Heath did not have a Liberal Democrat MP and instead they had a loyal Labour MP, maybe a young ambitious one, who would have voted with the government and could be relied upon to do so, then all of these changes would have gone through, including for existing claimants, and billions of pounds would be taken from people with disabilities. Now, I see that Labour intend to delete some of the clauses, so they delete about a two-tier benefit system. So Labour seems to be happy with a two-tier benefit system that only protects people who have been diagnosed in the past. They want to delete the statement that having a disability is not a choice. So does Labour really think that people choose to be disabled? It seems from this that they do. I'm sure our council doesn't believe that, and I urge people to vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak on the amendment? Councillor Thorne, and then, Councillor Thorne, and then Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually find myself agreeing with Councillor Wilson with regards to this amendment. In particular, point 9, where you call for our MP to actively vote for taxation on private schools. It's find that there is a private school which actually is one of the leading private schools of its kind for supporting children with various different educational needs and also speech and language, various issues and what have you. A lot of parents at that school are currently really struggling to keep their kids in there. Some have remortgaged their homes just to be able to give their kids the education and support they need. If that taxation is supported, which obviously it's already gone through, so many other people are going to be struggling. So why would we be wanting to support that, which goes against, obviously, this whole motion entirely? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a point of clarification. I'm no historian, but to the best of my knowledge, the last Liberal government in this country ended in 1915. There was a coalition between 2010 and 2015 where the Liberal Democrats were a junior partner, where David Cameron was the Prime Minister. But you referenced successive Liberal and Conservative governments. I am a little older than Councillor Quinn, but I do not remember the last Liberal government in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mayor. Slightly confused why we got a history lesson from Councillor Quinn, and he seemed to miss out what happened prior to 2010 and why we ended up with a coalition as Labour had crashed the economy. But that's perhaps not that relevant to this motion. The bit that confuses me was his slightly snarky comment around VAT on education. And I think Munira Wilson's words sort of seem quite relevant, where she argued that the policy could reduce the partnership work between private and state schools and would be a burden for parents who felt that state schools could not meet their children's needs. Now, you have to remember that if you're sending your child to Eton, you've probably got enough money to spend those child's school fees on a holiday each year, as well as sending your child to Eton. But the people that this hits the hardest are not the millionaires and billionaires. The people that this hits the hardest are those who've been failed by the county council, who are trying to do the best for their children. I cannot believe he's attacked caring mums, dads and carers who are trying to do the best for their children with a failing county council. Before whacking VAT, which has been a matter that's been discussed for a number of years, what is Labour's plan to fix the county council problem around that? Because so far we've heard absolutely zip, naught, nout and nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Any other Councillors want to debate? Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to start by saying I was actually very disappointed when I read this amendment by Councillor Quinn, and I have a lot of time for Councillor Quinn. I have a lot of respect for him. And when I read the amendment, it came across to me as a nakedly partisan attempt to provide cover to a government making decisions, unpopular decisions. From my own perspective in this administration, we've had to make very difficult decisions to address the financial problems that we inherited, and the Labour government is having to do similar things in a much broader, larger scale. However, when you have to tackle financial problems, it requires decision making, and it requires you to look at what is an acceptable choice to make. In our deliberations in this administration, we have taken great care to protect the most vulnerable people in our society when we've had to make those very difficult decisions which will have severe political ramifications for some of us in this chamber. I mean, we've been discussing the sale of an asset in my own ward, that could have very difficult political ramifications for myself. But we were willing to make that decision because it enabled us to continue delivering services for the most vulnerable people in Surrey Heath. Compare it to the government, they have to take a whole wider view, and I don't envy the Chancellor. But the decision to try to balance books on those who receive benefits, personal independence payments, are the most vulnerable in our society, and they deserve support. And the government is making, in my opinion, the wrong political decisions. So I'm just very disappointed in this amendment because it seeks to look to completely whitewash, cover up the actual active decisions that the government was trying to make. And it's perfectly acceptable to say that they changed their mind. But if they had gotten their way, they would have gone through with these cuts. And I think it's not acceptable to provide cover for that. And I was very disappointed in Councillor Quinn's proposal to delete Part 7, which believes that anyone could become disabled at any time, and having a disability is not a choice people make. How any of us in this chamber could not agree with that statement is outrageous. So I won't be supporting this amendment, and I would encourage Councillor Quinn and Councillor Rowlands to not be... We always get accused of being overtly political, and I think the original motion brought by Councillor Wilson was a very good attempt, and many would accuse Councillor Wilson of being overtly political in this chamber from time to time. And I believe the text of the original motion is very carefully worded, and I think the amendment just attempts to cover up for a political decision that our government wanted to make to spare their blushes. Thank you, Mayor.
So I'm just checking if any councillors are. So we have Councillor Tong Perrott just to speak.
Yeah, with regards to Councillor Quinn's amendments, I'd say that a good government looks to improve the living standard of the people rather than to make the vulnerable suffer. And what this is doing is making the vulnerable suffer as a result. And looking back in history, we don't want history to repeat itself, where when you make and you press the people to press people's livelihoods and make them suffer, they'll come up with an uprising. Bolshevik Revolution, French Revolution, the 1911 revolution in China. It's where people, the lower class, were suffering, and that's why they rise up. So, I'd like to quote a story. I think this urban story that goes around in the internet, that the mark of a good person, of a successful person, is not how they treat their peers or their seniors, but how they treat the janitors, the cleaning staff, and how they treat the people who need care. and not just brush them off. And with regards to the private schools, I'd say that I know of people who, because of the kids having disabilities and not finding enough funding and care in the local schools, have decided to scrimp and save and work very hard to send them to a private school. I'm not saying that, I'm one for that, but yet now they are suffering by having to pay an extra 20% VAT on top of their fees while they're still struggling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tom Perrott. Can I invite everybody, if we finish debating, to a vote on the amended substantive motion? So I will now, show of hands. I will now ask for a show of hands for the amendment. Yeah, for the amendment. Yeah, I will now ask, for a show of hands, unless anyone indicates otherwise. So all those in favour? Thank you. Okay. All those against? Any abstentions? No abstentions. So. We're now returning to the original motion, where we're all going to debate. Councillor Garrett, any?
This will probably come as no surprise, but I also wish to propose an amendment to the motion, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Gordon.
I second the amendment.
Thank you. So it's Councillor Garrett. Speak.
Thank you. I've sent an email, but if you want a hard copy, I have hard copies here. So, if you would do, that's fine. Thank you. I'll be brief on this. I actually, and I have said this a few times recently, and I really am scared that I'm saying it. I am in pretty much agreement with Councillor Wilson on most of his motion. I'm coming from a non-political way here. I mean, I know we're in the chamber, and I know but this is me speaking as me, not as the Conservative group leader, because this probably doesn't go with what the Conservative parties are currently going down the route of. So this is me speaking, probably from the heart, to be fair, because I've said my son. We've had to fill out PIP forms for my son, and it's not an easy thing to do. You have to think about the worst day. Now, my son is not, by any stretch of the imagination, severe in the issues he has, but he has hidden disabilities. He hasn't got a leg missing. He hasn't got an arm missing. What he's got is a mental difficulty. You could argue that he doesn't need that support necessarily. It's not means tested when you get your PIP funding. So we fill out the form, we complete the form. It's a difficult form. Anyone who's ever filled one of those forms in, it's pages and pages and pages of questions which you don't want to answer, okay? So I am a supporter of PIP funding, okay? And obviously UC as well. And obviously in my own ward as a councillor, I've helped residents when they've come to me and said, look, we need extra support. And obviously DLA funding as it was, and PIP funding are there to be able to support those people that really need it, that have got children or parents, adults that need that support. So, as I say, I am supportive of that. It's not just for people that you can visually see that are disabled. There are many people in Surrey Heath that I know this will affect. There are many people within my own ward that I know this will affect, with both PIP and UC funding. Now, having said all of that, I believe the only thing I disagreed with in Councillor Wilson's motion was the fact he said putting a halt to it. My suggestion is that what is done is that we suggest when the leader, who's obviously getting expert at writing letters, when he sends a letter, he's actually suggesting there's a review of the PIP and the health uplift of UC. I don't want to necessarily put a halt to it. Now, I know that may not necessarily, doesn't agree with the sentiment of what Councillor Wilson's motion is, but that's what I'm suggesting. When I read the motion, that was the only thing that I an issue with. So, and the one more thing I will say, and this probably will not go down particularly well, is as a governor in a school, when VAT on school fees was discussed, there was a concern that those parents that send their children to private school because their class sizes are smaller and those children are likely to get more support, they're actually there because that is the best thing for their child. In a lot of cases, those parents are struggling. I'm not saying every parent that sends their child to public school is in that situation, but a number of parents that send their children to public school are sending them there because they believe that's the best thing for their child. So by adding VAT onto their school fees puts those children, the children, not the parents have to obviously consider paying it, but puts those children in jeopardy of getting what they believe, their parents believe, to be the best education they can do. And to be fair, at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure we may disagree on a lot, but I think we pretty much all agree in this chamber that all our children should get the best education they can. Okay, so that's my point. My motion is before you, and I intend on saying nothing else on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Gordon, would you like to speak on? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've already seen this evening that debates on welfare are always a tough and emotive issue. We've already heard some powerful testimony from colleague Councillor Garrett. Councillor Wilson spoke very powerfully on his original motion. And I think the problem sometimes with welfare is that there's a presentation of easy solutions. And I think this amendment helps get us to a position where I could support it. On the one hand, you often hear this argument that you're heartless if you point out a need that we need to manage and fund welfare effectively, and it can't be just for everyone who asks for it. And on the other hand, you sometimes have the other extreme where people try to label all welfare recipients as undeserving or scroungers, and we know that that's not true. But I just want to talk a little bit about the numbers that we're dealing with across the UK. 3.7 million people in the UK claim personal independence payment, and that number doubled between 2018 and 2023. 7.9 million people in the UK are in receipt of universal credit. That's an increase of over 1 million in just 1 year. In my view, those trends are not sustainable for funding, and I accept totally that my party bears some of the responsibility for that. Further, a disproportionate number of new claimants are younger, and there is a danger that younger people become trapped in the welfare system because they're better off sticking with their current situation than trying to break through the barrier and find work. Now, that won't apply to everyone, but it can apply to some people. And I think we should remember the original reason why personal independence payments were brought in, supported by the Conservative and Liberal Democrat government, to replace the old disability living allowance. And a key driver for that was to reduce the burden of the welfare bill on the state. Now, I believe that those of us who are members of both of those parties should be proud of what was achieved in that 2010 to 2015 government. Maybe not everyone will agree, but that is my view. And I think that we did start to get control of the public finances. But since COVID in particular, that budget has increased and increased and increased at a disproportionate rate and an unaffordable rate. Of course, I think everyone in this chamber wants to support those who are in desperate need of assistance and make sure that they continue to receive it. But it must be a safety net to catch people and not a choice, or even worse, in my view, a trap where people become trapped in the welfare system. My fear is that the motion as originally worded does not acknowledge the overall need to reduce the welfare bill to make it sustainable in the long term and make sure that those vulnerable people continue to receive these benefits in 10, 20, 30 years' time, and encourage people to get back to work where that is possible. I think that this amendment, which deals with that funding issue makes me able to support, but otherwise I would not be able to.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Garrett and I often say things like, I wasn't planning to speak, but. I think I'd first like to thank Councillor Garrett for sharing his personal story there. I think when people do that, I think it makes it much more real, the sorts of things that we are debating in this chamber, and it brings a reality, as did Councillor Wilson's excellent speech, the reality of some of the challenges our residents have, and in your particular case, within your own family. So, with not intending to speak, my sister, who was a public servant, a teacher, went to work, took her kids windsurfing, took her class windsurfing, had a windsurfing fall. I don't know how many of you have done windsurfing. I remember doing it at Southend in the mud. It was quite an experience. But it's the bang onto the water from horizontal, a bit like a heavy fall, effectively. Nothing much kind of happened. And then I think it was about 48 hours later, we're doing the run to St. Peter's, which is a bit grim for me because that's where my father passed away. So very quickly, it wasn't St. Peter's, it was beyond their pay grade. It was the specialist unit at St. George's, Tooting, and fair play to the excellent medical staff there. She was effectively sedated to protect her and try and keep her life size, all as they should be. And then they had to do what I call a complete reboot. And I know some of you are in IT, so you understand what that means, but it was effectively the human reboot. She's very lucky today, lives a very fulfilling life, very active within Runnymede in keeping the council, holding the council to account on things like community services and transport for the disabled. She is registered disabled. Like I said, I don't know if she's holding a PIP. She may well be. She may not be as well. What I do know is she's never worked again. So I will accept the amendment, and I think it's done in good spirit from Councillor Garrett. And I think it just brings home to all of us that we just don't want to be there. What I would say to Councillor Quinn and Councillor Rowlands is really good try at defending really bad policy. Really good try at defending really bad process. You've got to listen to the users, you've got to listen to the carers, you've got to think about how do these things impact. As Councillor Garrett said, it's not just the physical challenges, it can be other challenges as well, the hidden challenges. So, yeah, I think the Chamber was fairly united in voting down that amendment because it was bad. And thank you to Councillor Wilson for raising it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Are there any other members wishing to debate? Before I ask Councillor Wilson to right to reply.
Just a point of order, Mayor. I think we have to have a vote on the amendment and then come back to debate the amended, if the amendment is successful.
Yeah, we would just right to reply on the amendment. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I've got nothing to add to the amendments debate. Thank you.
With that in mind, can we move to the vote on the Councillor Garrett's amendment? Show of hands again, is it? Show of hands. So could I have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Garrett's? Thank you. And those against? And any abstentions? Okay. So it's passed. Okay, members, Councillor Garrett's motion becomes a substantive motion. And we can enter debate. Councillor Rise.
I'm sorry to make this meeting longer, but I wish to give notice I intend to propose an amendment. I reserve the right to speak.
Do you have a seconder? Or...
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Finan-Cook. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. This is a very small amendment. I actually agree with Councillor Garrett's amendment in his intention. However, in the amendment, I believe it took out a very key part of the original motion, which I wish to now add back in, which I do believe is within constitutional procedure. So now within the now substantive motion, after the word to request, I wish to add back in that they halt all cuts to and request, and then it continues with the new substantive motion. Which is of point 9, it would say calls on the leader of the council to write to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions to request that they halt all cuts to and request a comprehensive review of PIP and the health uplift of UC, continuing as now amended.
I think we're just going to try and pop that on the screen so that all members can see that. Would you just have a little bit of patience? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I didn't actually explain why I wanted to make this amendment. My apologies. As we've discussed this evening, and I think Councillor Cope's point about the need for the welfare bill to be a sustainable bill, that bill could not ever exponentially grow. It's not possible for the budget to be able to manage that. However, before a review, it would be essential that no changes I believe that no changes should be made to personal independence allowance and the still planned implementation of the cuts to the health uplift of universal credit. So that is why I wish to add back in the original text of halt all cuts to. So that's it's just to add back in that wording, which I believe now brings together a clear compromise and hopefully a wide consensus that we agree that the cuts shouldn't be made at this point. A review then should be undertaken as set out, which would then be able to provide a much more considered view on how the welfare bill would go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. We're nearly there with the wording to go on the screen. Thank you for your patience. Councillor Rice, would you like to read this and check that it's correct?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is not the text on it. Say it slowly. It's all which is to type as I dictate. So, the amendment is to include the words following after. So, include these words after the word request. That they halt all cuts to personal independence. They hold all cuts to PIP and request, my apologies, that they hold all cuts to and request a comprehensive review of PIP and the health uplift of UC. I think it's just sorry, my apologies. It should say that they halt all cuts to PIP and the health uplift of UC and request. So that would be the only additional text that would need to be added in. My apologies. I am going to make a further suggestion. My apologies. And so, Mr. Hall, so after the word request, that they halt all cuts to, comma, and changes to eligibility criteria for, comma, PIP and the health uplift of UC, and request. Sorry, eligible for, comma, PIP and the health uplift of UC and request.
Councillor Eyes, are you happy with that?
I am happy.
Thank you.
My apologies. Thank you, Mayor.
No. Thank you, members. Councillor Rice, is that correct in its current form? Thank you very much for just checking. Councillor Wilson, is this a point of order or is it? Because I need to ask Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. It might be.
If
If it speeds things up, I'm happy to accept that amendment to the motion.
Councillor Finan-Cook, would you like to speak?
I've nothing further to add other than I hope that the Chamber will vote for this amendment. I think it brings together a statement which is really strong and I think incorporates views from across the Chamber.
On the substantive motion.
Okay, can I now ask for a debate on the substantive motion that Councillor Wilson has agreed on to the amendment that Councillor Rise has brought forward? Councillor Rowlands?
Yes, Madam Mayor, can I just point out that this is all sort of delayed action, isn't it? Because there is a very effective debate going on within the Labour Party in Parliament on this issue. And obviously, the result of the last vote in Parliament was that the original proposal had been turned down. So all this stuff seems to be de facto. We're still waiting to see what will be the acceptable response that will come forward after what Stephen Timms is actually looking at. And that's the important element. So it proves that how the Democratic Labour Party is debating and looking at this very issue and will come up with a solution, I guarantee, in the near future to it. So it's a sort of de facto debate to what is actually taking place at the moment. So there are sentiments which echoes much of what we've heard in the Chamber today going on at the moment, but it is there that the change will be made, and it's a very positive effect that this very debate has gone on, and there will be changes that come through from the party.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Councillor Garrett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, thank you for accepting my amendment. and I'm happy to accept your amended amendment. And I am not going to make any more amendments. All I would like to say is that might be the case, but what we're saying is the signal from Surrey Heath is we don't like it, and this is what we suggest. Thank you.
Anybody else got anything they would like to add? Everyone's in agreement with it, aren't they? So this is... Thank you. So we're ready to vote on Councillor Wilson's... Councillor Rice's... no. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay, I'll have a right of reply at the end of the debate. I think we've reached that point.
I'm just going to ask Nick Stevens to come in and just clarify a couple of points before we proceed with the final vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to confirm, as Councillor Wilson has accepted the amendment tabled by Councillor Rise, this is now effectively the substantive motion. So on that basis, I believe that Councillor Wilson does have the right to reply, and then we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. And I just want to thank everyone for engaging fully with this motion and for the officers and helping to amend it properly as well. Particularly like to thank for the contributions Councillor Tong Perrott, Councillor Garrett, Councillor Rise and Councillor MacDonald. And I think this is an exercise in democracy. I take the point that was made that this is really symbolic of Surrey Heath, and we can't really change what the government is going to do, but the government has been forced to change. It's a government with a massive majority, and it's been forced by moral pressure from Lib Dem MPs, from backbench Labour MPs who are brave enough to defy the whip. So I think this is an important exercise in democracy, and we're being part of that now. So thank you again to all colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will now ask for a show of hands, unless anyone indicates otherwise. So, members in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Members against? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. I declare the vote carried. Agenda item 9. The Council has received a petition. Please can I invite Miss Atifard to come to the microphone and introduce her petition. Ms. Fard, you do have up to 5 minutes to present your petition.
I would like to thank all of you for being here to debate the petition, all the councillors who have supported the petition, and in particular, nearly the 1,000 residents who have to date signed the petition and taken part in a survey. Residents were promised accountability and transparency by this administration, but a number of them have told me that they have lost faith in the system. At the PNF Scrutiny Committee meeting, the gallery was full. Today, it's empty, and that saddens me. And it is because people do not feel, residents, our local communities, do not feel they are heard. And today was difficult for me to be here and be a voice. But I thought we have to. That is democracy. Some felt betrayed. Some felt that their integrity was questioned at previous council meetings. Why do they feel they have been failed by this administration? Well, let me explain to you why I have sympathy with them and why I feel like that. They have been failed at different levels of the process. The marketing of the lands, that process failed them. Yes, there is a difference in the legal opinion between myself, three barristers, and this council on whether or not the executive should authorise marketing of assets over £25,000. But we know, that happened and assets were marketed. But what was the outcome? One of the offerors told me that he was merely told that he should submit expression of interest rather than submit a detailed offer. Another resident told me that if they had enough time, they would have set up a company. They would have raised funds and tried to bid themselves to save Deep Cut Car Park, a car park used heavily by residents, communities, businesses. Even Councillor Morgan Rice said that at a previous meeting, that he uses that car park himself. And yet, that didn't happen. They felt that the executive failed them. The executive refused to defer its decision until after today, when they were presented with petitions and enough signatures. And they made a decision to sell Deep Cut Car Park. Key questions were not asked at that executive committee meeting, and we know that from the questions that were later asked at the scrutiny committee meeting. And sadly, the only offer on the table that would have kept Deep Cut Car Park as a community car park for years to come was turned down. Now, if finances was the only issue this council had, that offer could have been accepted. That was turned down. Now, a question was raised at the scrutiny committee meeting. And that is why the scrutiny committee meeting, I think, even failed people as well. But a key question was asked about whether or not that offer would have kept the car park in perpetuity, would have kept Wooden Road Car Park as a car park in perpetuity. Now, the offeror told me after that meeting that if the council had asked him, he would have changed his offer, improved it, and ensured that the car park would have been kept as a car park in perpetuity. That did not happen. And at the scrutiny committee, that business owner was rather attacked himself. He felt his integrity was questioned. We should celebrate our businesses who are defending their businesses, source of income for their employees.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. And trying to save communities, but rather we did not do that. Questions were asked of me about my political affiliation, how many petitions I had shared, but not about the evidence that I submitted to the scrutiny committee. And that is why I think even at that meeting, residents felt that they were failed and betrayed. Unitary elections are coming. This council will not exist in April 2027. There will be shadow local authorities. And that is why I'm urging this council to pause the sale, listen to the residents, come up with different strategies, save our local community and key assets for the unitary authority to make right decisions. Ooh. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Hard. I now invite members to debate the petition and to move a motion on this item. Councillor Ashbury.
Thank you, Mayor. I was unsure. I have prepared a motion. I was waiting to see what the presentation from the petitioner said before I shared it. But as there has been nothing new in what has been presented, it has all been regurgitated from P&F committee and previous exec, I would like to circulate my motion now, if that's okay.
I need to second the first. Yeah.
Councillor Ashbury, do you have a seconder?
and I reserve my right to speak.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to second Councillor Ashley's proposed motion. And reserve the right to speak.
Holly, do you wish to speak on your motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As I say, I did hold off, which is why I didn't circulate my motion beforehand, because I was waiting to see if there were any new arguments that were going to come out, rather than the ones that have been presented several times to this chamber and to committees up till now. But I would like to thank Ms Fard for bringing this petition to us this evening. I seem to have said that sentence quite a lot over the past few months, but I do genuinely welcome scrutiny from the residents that we, as elected members, serve. I would like to dispute some of the numbers that were quoted. The information I had was not 1,000, but 351 signatures on the petition when it was submitted to the council. And I would just like to remind members that one of the first acts of this administration was to halve the number of signatures needed on a petition for it to be debated at full council. Under the old constitution, with 351 signatures, this petition would not have made it to this meeting this evening. I'm also confused a little, and I may have misheard or misunderstood. You reference differences of legal opinion. Our legal opinion, through our monitoring officer and the legal advisors of this council, tell us we have followed due process in all aspects of making the decision to sell these assets. In 1989, I was a much younger man, believe it or not. I had darker hair. And we were about to start a family, and so we bought a family home, moving up from the very modest starter home we'd had since we first got married. Like most young couples of that era, which is not most of you, we bought our home with a huge mortgage at an interest rate of 10.5%. 10.5%. For those who've only known low interest rates over the last 20 years, that was what we took out our mortgage on, which represented about half of my monthly take-home pay. By the time our daughter was 3 months old, our mortgage interest rate had gone up to 16.25%. I see someone smiling who remembers those days as well as I do. Now that represented 2/3 of my monthly take-home pay. Now, faced with insolvency and potential repossession of our home, not ideal with a newborn, we chose to sell what assets we had to pay down our debt and ease the monthly payments so that we could keep our heads above the water until either interest rates came down or salaries went up, or preferably both. And so sadly, our 12-month-old shiny silver Ford Sierra, the sapphire version with the boot, not the hatchback that looked like a jelly mould, I hasten to add, had to go. And I ended up commuting to work for a while on an old Vespa. I would have loved to have kept the car, especially during the winter months. But the responsible thing to do in order to keep our small family unit going was to sell off the unneeded assets. This council finds itself in exactly the same situation today. Disastrous commercial property speculation and a total lack of understanding of how much money the council actually had seems to have been the way the previous administration conducted itself, with little regard for the long-term implications of their actions. Inheriting this mess in 2023, we have chosen to behave in a more responsible manner. We now have audited accounts, and we know the scale of the challenge. It isn't pretty, but at least we don't have our heads in the sand as we go down the pan. One of the tough decisions we've had to take, if we are to safeguard those services which our residents tell us are important to them, is to look at selling some of our assets which are no longer core to the operation of this council. I believe that we have established through scrutiny of the decisions made so far that due process is being followed and that we are on the right path in our attempts to prevent this council running out of money. And I believe this action should continue. Many colleagues in this chamber refer to local government reorganisation and cite this as a reason to do nothing and to wait and see what happens. I get a little frustrated with that, given that this course of action depends somewhat on a Labour government finding a solution to billions of pounds of debt run up by Conservative councils in Surrey. I personally am not expecting a magic bullet. And I believe it would be totally irresponsible of us as elected councillors to procrastinate and hope for Theresa May's magic money tree to appear. I therefore believe that to accede to the petitioner's request to pause the sale of assets, which is necessary to keep this council afloat until someone else may or may not solve the problem, would be a gross dereliction of our duty as councillors. We must continue to strive to do what is right for the future of this council and our residents. In 1989, despite at times having to endure a cold, wet and unpleasant journey to work, selling the shiny silver Sierra was the responsible thing to do to keep a roof over our infant daughter's head. In 2025, selling assets no longer core to our operations is also the responsible thing to do to keep this council solvent. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Councillor MacDonald, as seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The previous administration, in its drive towards our effective bankruptcy for this council, made three critical mistakes. These were the ludicrous purchase of the mall and the House of Fraser for 130 million in 2016, the latter based on 3 signatures and dubious use of an urgent action process. The failure to put in place a capable financial team to deliver annual accounts and have them audited for 4 years in a row. The failure to manage risk properly, leaving most of our unsustainable debt exposed to short-term global markets, and yes, the 49 days of a gambling bender by Conservative Prime Minister Liz Truss with the UK economy. I'm sorry to keep having to remind people, but some people forget, including the petitioner. This administration has faced up to the financial disaster zone inherited by investing in our finance team and its leadership to deliver a coherent budget, completing the accounts and restarting the external audit process, generating a transformation plan to reduce costs by 12% whilst maintaining critical resident services. Unlike what the Surrey Heath Conservatives lead petitioner suggests doing, we didn't kick the smelly can down the road, we picked it up and we dealt with it responsibly, just as we told Surrey Heath voters we would in our 2023 manifesto and our later council strategy. Our current budget actions help secure stability for resident services through a period of major uncertainty for council staff and a rapid change in local government within Surrey by trying to avoid effective bankruptcy and expensive government intervention. This is what a prudent, responsible and values-driven Liberal Democrat administration does for its council taxpayers, to protect their best interests. It doesn't look to dither and delay or burden its residents with an unnecessary extra £645,000 a year of expensive government commissioners. So far, the petitioner and the Surrey Heath Conservative councillor friends have repeatedly spread misinformation and falsely raised anxiety amongst residents, delivered no alternative viable proposals to deal with the debt and the interest mountain they created, wasted people days of scarce council officer time and consumed expensive third-party resources. Examples include proposing the council should run bag shop tip, despite it being counter to the legislative setup for waste management and its associated funding streams, proposing voluntary car parking charges or selling a surplus asset at a lower price to a property investor who is also commercially connected to a Conservative councillor, repeatedly threatened the council with judicial review at the High Court and required the convening of an extraordinary performance and finance scrutiny committee meeting. All of these have delivered nothing of any value for the residents. They have mistreated and misinformed for political gain. The professional and independent officers have made it clear that some assets are surplus to the requirements with respect to net income generation, future liabilities, current site utilisation and overall community value. Decisions made to date are in line with due process and represent best value for Surrey Heath council taxpayers. Failure to, and I quote the report, failure to sell surplus assets will have a material impact on the council's medium-term financial strategy, both capital and revenue accounts, putting the council at increased risk. The Surrey Heath Conservatives petitioner, based on a casual relationship with most facts, a total denial of the council's financial situation, and only a loose understanding of the council's severe resource challenges through local government reorganisation, has only focused their attention on one person and their political ambition, which has already been democratically rejected by residents on 3 previous occasions. This Liberal Democrat administration will continue to listen to residents' reasonable concerns about any changes we propose and we will actively look for appropriate mitigations. However, our primary goal remains ensuring continuity of cost-effective, fit-for-purpose services to Surrey Heath residents, particularly those most in need that we talked about earlier in today's debate, with a smooth, orderly transition into a new unitary authority. We do recognise that these changes are not ideal for a small number of residents, and we do ask for their understanding. But at the end of the day, this is what grown-up politicians do. They lead their residents through troubled times, and they don't pander to the lowest forms of popularism, unlike Surrey Heath Conservatives petitioner and her political puppet masters. I support Councillor Ashby's motion as read. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Motion. Members, are you ready to debate? Councillor Cope.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. I've sent the text to Democratic Services. If that's easier to get it up on the screen, I'll just read it out. It's the addition of a new paragraph 4, and then obviously renumbering paragraph 4 as paragraph 5, and the text to read, will consult with local residents and relevant ward councillors prior to marketing for sale any asset with an expected market value in excess of £25,000.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor Garrett.
Just in case you're about to ask, I will second that motion, and I reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Cope, would you like to speak?
Thank you. I'm not going to follow the leader's approach and try and be too political here. I was slightly disappointed by the tone of his comments. It feels a little bit like this council dismisses concerns of people unless they are members of the Liberal Democrats or wholly supportive of this administration. He said that he wants to listen to reasonable concerns, but it seems the only person who gets to decide which concerns are reasonable are himself and his fellow executive members. I think anyone on the executive who thinks that the way that Deep Cut Car Park was sold was handled in a good way is kidding themselves. It was a ham-fisted approach, and it saw local residents left very angry. They were not consulted in advance. They did not know it was coming. And frankly, I think it was a disappointing outcome for them. Perhaps the outcome may not have been different had a different approach been taken, but I think that just dropping this on people with little to no warning is inappropriate and unfortunate. I think that it would be consistent with the Liberal Democrat manifesto of 2023, which talked a lot about listening to local residents, if you were to involve them more in the decision-making process on the assets which they care so much about, and also involve their ward councillors who are elected to represent them on such matters. And therefore, I hope that you will see fit to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor Garrett? Speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I pretty much have nothing else to say because I think Councillor Cope has said most of it. We've also had a long evening already, and I'm not going to stand up and slag off everybody else in the chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Lee?
I'm a bit jaw-dropped, really. We have a motion to Surrey Heath Borough Council here, a petition to Surrey Heath Borough Council here, which I'm struggling to understand. Has it gone to any other local authority? Because, of course, we're talking about the sale of properties and the reference of CGR, but, of course, we're just 1/12 of that cog. I'd, at the very least, expect it to go to Surrey County Council, because, of course, Surrey County Council are selling off assets in our borough over £25,000. I think this is a completely shamelessly political motion and amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Lee has just raised a question. Ms Fard, are you aware of this?
No.
No? Thank you.
No, I'm not. Yeah.
So who's next?
So, Councillor Rise. Councillor Rise, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a bit surprised that she's in this chamber so much I accidentally called her a councillor. Miss Fard doesn't know if the petition has gone to other councils, considering that she is the petitioner. So I'm going to take that as no. She said that she wasn't. The question was that if she was aware, if it had gone to other Surrey councils, and she responded that she wasn't aware. So, and I'm just going to move on to the amendment. I find Councillor Cope's amendment interesting, considering he didn't consult with ward councillors when he decided to call in the decision. So it's one rule for him and one rule for the council. Also, Councillor Finan-Cook has repeatedly committed to engaging with the ward councillors prior to marketing. So again, this is now an irrelevant amendment, and will consult with local residents. I think it's the responsibility of all councillors to be consulting with residents. It's what I did during the process, which is if he had asked me when he was deciding to do his call-in, I could have told him that I spoke to residents from Wood End Road about their thoughts on the sale of the car park, which I raised in the executive. And the only reason I didn't raise it at the Performance and Finance Committee is because I was on holiday at the time, otherwise I would have done it then. So I think it's a bit rich. Once again, from Councillor Cope to want the council essentially to tie its hands by a method of essentially stopping any sale by the back door because he wants to have a very open consultation on the decision of marketing. The Constitution is, and the policy that we have in this council is very clear about what this council has responsibility for when it comes to the disposal of assets. That it's been set up by the leader, it's been set up by the portfolio holder time and time again. So I don't understand how this amendment assists in this policy. We've already seen that residents are more than able to engage with the council. We have a petition here, and I've known Ms Fard for a number of years, and I know she is not a shy person when it comes to speaking up for her own views and for organising people to respond to a survey and a petition. It is inefficient for a council to run its decision-making by referendum. And that is essentially what this amendment is asking us to do. Is that essentially every decision that we attempt to make in this council must go out to consultation. I think that's completely a ludicrous position to put this council in. It would be a severe waste of resources, of officer time. What we want is residents to engage with us and us to engage with the residents as ward councillors. It is our responsibility to do that. It is the council and the executive responsibility to put forward a plan which puts this council onto a sustainable footing moving forward. So no, I will not be supporting the amendment, as I think it's mostly irrelevant because the portfolio holders already agreed to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. It's not often I find myself standing up to support Councillor Cope, but I will be very happy to do so on this motion. On the basis of we've obviously had some experience now in St Michael's with the Yorktown car park going up for sale. And while I fully accepted the portfolio holder's apology at the time, I think Councillor Rowlands only found out when the decision to park it went live. So I'd really support an amendment to say, you know, definitely relevant ward councillors will be consulted prior to marketing. And also with big decisions, you know, we can leave, you know, consulting quite vague. Consulting could be, you know, if you're selling off a big car park in a town centre or a village, just put up a few signs in that car park to advertise the fact that it's going to be sold. Post on social media. You know, it doesn't take that much to consult residents. It's not a huge additional cost, especially when you're selling a large asset that really matters to people's lives. So, yeah, I'll be happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillor Whitcroft. Councillor David Whitcroft.
Thank you, Mayor. This petition, when it was originally proposed, dealt specifically with 3 sites. One was the Wood End Road car park site in Deepcut, which we've heard about. One was land at Hollyhedge Road, which has subsequently been withdrawn from the sale process. And the other, as we just heard from Councillor Quinn, was in London Road, Cambling. And to quote the papers we have before us, the decision to sell the asset was made by the executive at its meeting on the 20th of May 2025. The decision, it adds, was not called in. So we now have a situation where people are getting exercised about something which happened in May and which they claim not to know anything about until recently. Please, happy to give way.
Wait, can I just clarify, when I was talking just now, that wasn't the land to the rear of London Road, that was about Yorktown car park, which is currently being marketed. Thank you.
I, of course, accept that, Madam Mayor. Nevertheless, it doesn't alter the fact that I'm getting very, very tired indeed of being told what Deepcut residents actually think, want, and so forth. It's true to say that the petition, which you can debate whether it's 350 signatures or 1,000, but it dealt with 3 different sites. I asked how many of the petitioners specifically dealt with the Deepcut site, and answer, there was none. The plain fact of the matter is that local members in Deepcut, to my knowledge, have received some 11 comments from residents about this particular issue. It also should be said that some groups have expressed reservations and have been fairly vocal in making those points. But the vast majority of Deepcut residents are very used to change. they've accepted over the course of the last 10 years or so proposals to put 1,200 new homes into their village, of which some 450 have been already implemented. And they have accepted that. They understand, unlike some people, that change is necessary. And change comes, and without change, we go back to the Stone Age, I would suggest. So I don't wish to be lectured anymore by Councillor Cope or anybody else in this chamber, including Miss Vard, about what deep cut residents want and don't want. Because we know, because we're there. And I look forward to the opportunity of telling Councillor Cope what people in St Paul's, thank you, what people in St Paul's might want when that opportunity arises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Anybody else have anything to say? Councillor Ashby, would you like to, you have the right to reply on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not accept this amendment. I do not believe it adds anything to the motion. I do not believe it's necessary for the reasons already explained by my colleague, Councillor Rise, in that ward councillors are consulted, ward councillors consult with their residents. I do not believe adding a further delay and further procrastination into a process which has been tested legally and has been through executive and through a P&F committee needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. We now come to vote on the amendment. Can I see a show of hands, those for the amendment? Can I see a show of hands for those against the amendment? Just checking for any abstentions. So, we now go back to the original motion. I'll take a vote on. Anybody else would like to debate? Anything on the original motion? Councillor Ashby, you do have the right to speak again.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of points that I'd like to make. When I sold that Ford Sierra I was talking about earlier, I advertised it in the paper and I took the highest bid. I took the highest bid. The person that offered me the most money, that was the best to support my family at that time. I did not sell it for 20% cheaper to a bloke round the corner because he was a mate of a mate. I looked after what was best for the people I was responsible for, which I believe is also what this council needs to do. Similarly, my eBay settings, when I sell things, do not say sell to the second or the third highest bidder. They say sell for the maximum amount of money that we can generate to generate a capital receipt. I fail to see how behaving differently in a council is expected than normal behaviour in everyday life. And the final point I'd like to make, I've said it before, I will say it again, and I will no doubt say it time and time again over the next 9 months. Procrastinate, procrastinate, procrastinate. LGR will fix it. The government will bail us out. That is not going to happen. That is not responsible behaviour for people elected to this chamber to just say, let's kick the can down the road and hope Keir Starmer is going to solve all of our problems, because I don't actually believe he wants to, and I don't believe he will. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. We now move to the vote on the original motion. So can I see a show of hands for those in favour? Thank you. And those against? No. And any abstentions? Okay. I declare the vote carried. Okay. So, agenda item 10. I would like to invite the Chief Executive to introduce the report on a community governance review. Thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I do apologise. We do have some slides to present to you. I do appreciate you've already had a very long day, but I think it's important that we introduce this paper as best as we possibly can. So, if there are questions, just to clarify, either myself, the monitoring officer, or the Democratic Services manager can assist in answering them if the Mayor is accepting of us to do so. The first slide. Those in the chamber will be aware of the annual plan objective that is set out on the screen, which asked officers to prepare a report for council, setting out options for the introduction of parished areas across the entire borough. You'll note the report also proposes to seek views on the current parished areas, and paragraph 1.2 sets out the legislation under which the community governance review is conducted and also outlines the options that can be considered. As a reminder of our parish landscape, in the west, clearly we are unparished, whereas in the east, or predominantly east, we have Bisley, Chobham, West End and Woodlandsham Parish Council. The approach taken has been designed to be as impartial as it possibly can, with the next phases of the community governance review process informed by the consultation responses. It's proposed that the community governance review is borough-wide and seeks the views for both parished and non-parished areas, as set out on the slide in front of you. As this slide states, we've proposed changes in some of the areas, as in the absence of Surrey Heath as an entity, these irregularities in the current parish boundaries should be rectified. Just to provide some examples, here in front of you, you have Scots Grove, where the proposal is to relocate this into the Chobham Parish area. In relation to Minorca Avenue, we're looking to rectify anomalies where housing developments straddle parish boundaries, so we've taken this into consideration. Should new parishes be formed, it would be proposed to move this into any newly formed parish area covering Deep Cut. Apologies, I've lost my place. There we are. This slide shows the proposal to consult on the creation of a single Windlesham parish ward, replacing the current 2 North and South parish wards. And in relation to the unparished areas, these are the proposals that we're putting forward, and no firm view is expressed. I think that's very important for us to cite. The proposal is to consult on 4 parishes within the unparished areas, or 2 parishes, or a single parish, or essentially a do-nothing option. So just to clarify the options that are in the paper, as you can see, option 1 is 4 parishes consisting of Camberley, Deep Cut and Heatherside, Frimley and Parkside, Frimley Green and Mitchett. In relation to the 2 parishes, as you will see on the screen again, we have Camberley and Frimley as 2 proposed parishes. And finally, a single large parish covering all of the unparished areas, set out in front of you. In relation to the timetable is set out on the slide before you and is in the report. What I would highlight is that there may need to be some flexibility in relation to the timetable. Clearly, we are working within our existing resources as much as we reasonably can. And whilst the end date of May 2027 we feel very much is set in stone, there may be some flexibility within the timescales or the activities prior to that. That is the presentation, Mayor. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr Stevens. I would like to invite comments on the report and ask for a member to move a motion in respect of this report. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose to the recommendation as per the officer report and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second that.
Do you wish to speak on your motion?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Members, I'd like to take us back, it might be about half an hour, to that nice fluffy moment where Councillor Garrett and I were best buddies on that, sharing personal stories. And I'd like us all to just take the temperature down a bit on this particular debate, if that's okay. I think it's too important to our residents. We all will have slightly separate views on this, and that's only appropriate. Personally, I've tried to stay out of the cut and thrust of it and try and support the officers, which I'll come to in a minute in my more formal speech. But if we could really sort of temper our comments to think in a really constructive way around what's best for our residents. Members, your approval of this report today from the Chief Executive fulfils the annual plan action of delivering a borough-wide community governance review, also known as CGR. Furthermore, it makes good our commitment to Council from the infamous debate in February, which I know some of you, like me, may not yet have caught up on your beauty sleep from, to look again at the Windlesham area where residents' concerns were raised in our earlier engagement survey. Revisiting our community governance arrangements now, be they parish, town or community councils, is important for our residents in the light of local government reorganisation, also known as LGR. Keep note, it's only one letter difference. As whichever way the minister decides to go, apart from accepting the status quo, which, let's be honest, on recent form is not off the table, local decision-making powers will be sucked upwards and far away from our residents. Whether it's 2 or 3, it doesn't really change the situation. It will be sucked away from our residents. Progressing with CGR offers our residents 3 positive benefits. It ensures as a minimum 15% of the community infrastructure levy raised in the newly designated area of the borough stays in the local area. This can be hundreds of thousands of pounds over time. It provides for local government area representatives to take ownership in trust for a range of local community spaces and buildings that Surrey Heath Borough Council will potentially cascade down. It helps foster a spirit of community, civic pride and inclusion, thereby improving social cohesion within and across the generations, independent of personal background. And I think we only need to look at the work that the mayors have done, and there's a number here. I'm not going to call you all out because I'll forget somebody and they'll be upset. The mayors have done in doing that in the past, and there's an opportunity to continue that tradition. Members, if we don't support this, then we are rejecting 2 things, which certainly I hold dear, my party holds dear, and I suspect many of the rest of you hold dear. And that is subsidiarity. I think it was a cricketing Conservative Prime Minister that used to like that word. The principle that decisions should be made at the lowest possible level. And self-determination, the rights of the citizens to say how they should be governed. Furthermore, members, I see real threats to our way of life in Surrey Heath from the move to a potential mega authority that some wish to see, including the SIL money raised in our borough by the more than doubling of our housing target will not be ring-fenced locally. So funds from Frimley could end up in Ashford, from town could end up in Tongham, and from Deep Cut could go to Egham. And there are other options available. Discretionary community spaces and buildings will be left to wither as investment is diverted into statutory services, very important statutory services. Children and adult social services are 2 examples. Support for civic events to celebrate key national events, allow local groups to shine, and recognise individual contributions may be swept aside. Access to councillors as advocates for residents, casework will be reduced from 37 to probably 8 for the unparished areas today, giving those most in need an even weaker voice. Due to my position informally supporting the Chief Executive in executing his non-executive function duties, along with the support of our excellent democratic services under Ms Willis, it is not for me to direct a specific proposed outcome for the unparished or parished areas today, nor is it a requirement of today's debate. I will vote in favour of this motion to signal my support for the officer's approach, and whilst my group will have a free vote on the officer's recommendation and the report, I will resist amendments from any quarter that seek to hijack rather than enhance the proposal. There are incremental costs of this process of change and of maintaining new authorities. It is my personal assessment that the cost-benefit equation, both in the short and long term, indicates benefits to residents to protect their way of life within their local communities in Surrey Heath and to continue to access SIL funding for community projects. There are plenty of go, no-go decision points on this journey to stop or change scope. So at this stage, all we are committing to is to start the process. Further work on assessing the asset cascade potential and the best estimate of the incremental preset levels will continue in parallel with getting the public's initial views. On a practical level, I have looked all the key officers in the eye and have asked, can we make this happen before the guillotine comes down on the council's decision-making authority? And yes, genuinely, we don't know when that is. That means on time, on budget, on quality, and with no surprises, as I learnt from an ICI project manager. Apart from the last point, which given the residents are in control, is impossible to manage, if we are pragmatic, if we stick to the process, and we seek consensus, particularly across the chamber, then we can do it, and we owe it to the current and future residents to try. Members, we should try and seize the opportunity to give Surrey Heath residents the chance to embrace the options available through this process and help guide our future decision making. By doing so, we are honouring their right to self-determination and the empowerment that comes from applying the subsidiarity principle. We are being true democrats. Council, I would like to propose we accept the recommendation in the report as documented, unamended. Furthermore, I think it would send a strong signal to our residents that we are keen for them to take ownership of their future if this vote is unanimous. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Ashby, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I believe in democracy. It may not be perfect, but it's a damn sight better than the alternatives. I may believe that there's a better way of doing it, but fundamentally, people having the right to influence how they are governed is ingrained in my core beliefs. I may have mentioned LGR this evening, and I hope you all understand my views on just waiting for somebody to do something to us. Either of the proposals on the future of Surrey that are currently on the table leave us with a huge democratic deficit versus where we are today. Local decisions should be made locally, and the people making those decisions should be in touch with their community, not based tens of miles away, sat in a mega authority overseeing a population of hundreds of thousands. But what of the cost? As those of you who represent parish areas and are parish councillors, you know there is already a parish precept charged to residents. Currently, on average, across our borough, that represents a little over £1 per week per household. And our current estimates are that if we introduce town or community councils in the west of the borough, the cost per household would be of the same order of magnitude. So I ask the question, what is local democracy worth to you? I look everybody in the eye and say, what is it worth to you? £1 a week. This paper proposes beginning the process with a consultation, asking residents about what they think about how the future of local democracy should be structured. And I think we should let people have their say. And I think we should trust them to tell us how they would like to see their local government structured into the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Members to speak? Councillor Wheeler? Thank you.
Thank you. I actually lowered my hand for a short time because I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get my passion, my belief and my disbelief calm enough to be able to speak in a measured way. Unlike most of the conversations this evening, which have just been political ping pong, this is something that does deeply affect all of the residents. I applaud the creation of additional parished areas. I think it's something that leads to democracy and urges democracy. However, even the suggestion of having 4 parished areas sees numbers that reach in excess, the smallest numbers, being 8,200 and the largest representing 20,533 residents. The average size of parished areas across Surrey at the moment is in the 3,000s. So we're not looking, there are 86 parishes and the average size being 3,235 people. The leader said that this is a consultation that affects all across the whole of Surrey Heath. It doesn't, unless I'm misunderstanding something, and I would really, really be grateful if officers could correct me if I'm misunderstanding. My understanding for the consultation on Windlesham is that we are removing the word South Windlesham and the word North Windlesham and calling it Windlesham. Maybe we will save some costs there in printing. However, actually, this consultation makes no difference whatsoever to the residents of Windlesham that I represent. The residents of Windlesham voted for a CGR. They requested a CGR. A second legitimate request for a CGR was received by this council and has been kicked into the long grass on what is only evidenced as very false promises that the CGR will come when we review, given the creation of the local government. Councillor Ashbury said that he believes in democracy and a choice for the right of people to be heard. This isn't a choice for people to be heard. This is very limited options that we are giving to the whole of Surrey Heath, with the exclusion of Windlesham residents who have already said that they want a smallest parish area. We're not creating parished areas, we're creating massive parished areas that don't represent the parished areas across the rest of the Surrey whatsoever. So I'm really pleased that we're going to get the opportunity to call Windlesham South and Windlesham North Windlesham. I am deeply disappointed that there doesn't seem to be anything in this paper, and I really hope that I'm wrong, to allow Windlesham residents to have a Windlesham Parish Council that represents Windlesham Village. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you for your patience, Mayor. I mean, as far as I can see, I've been misquoted here. I don't remember saying it was a consultation of all the residents. That's the quote that was just used there. And secondly, I'd like to suggest that the member actually reads the paper, because the paper has clearly allows all options for Windlesham residents. It has deliberately been designed to specify that. And I have to say, in all honesty, Councillor Wheeler, I get a bit impatient with being lectured at when we've done our homework here. So I would like to ask the officers for a ruling on the points that Councillor Wheeler raised around the content of this report, because I think it's lazy.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Can I take...
My understanding is that they're called wards. They're not referred to as parishes.
Point of order, please, Mayor.
Thank you.
In terms of the constitution, I think the member has to raise her hand and ask for speaking rights first, and that procedure has just not been followed yet again in this chamber from the member being remote.
I'm just going to ask our Chief Exec here to just respond on a couple of points. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mayor. It was just to pick up on the point that Councillor Wheeler made about the fact that the consultation for Windlesham specifically only really related to whether it was north or south or an amalgam of both. The consultation will be designed to seek views of residents in all parished areas about the makeup of those parishes, and that will include questions in relation to disaggregation or aggregation or anything in between. So there is no option that's really off the table here. It's very important that that is clear. It's very much about the public providing their views, not just about parishing unparished areas, but also about the makeup of the current parishes and whether or not they feel that they're fit for purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Anybody else? So, who? Yep, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'll get my say in before the raft of hands gone up. Are we looking for another woolly moment? We'll look at a fuzzy moment. I would like to start by thanking the officers for pulling this information together, because there's obviously a lot of information here, and it gives us pretty much all the stuff that we want. I think on that fateful day in February when we discussed the CGR, not the LGR, because I know how much you like discussing the LGR, I made it clear that I wasn't supportive of something that was just looking at one particular parish, but I also made it very, very clear that I was in support of a CGR which covered the whole of Surrey Heath. My thoughts on that haven't changed. I'm still happy to support this because I think it's the right thing to do. So from my side, from me personally, I'm happy to support it. The only question I've got is the money. Obviously, there's a figure in there. I know what it said it's costed in other district and boroughs, and I think there's a figure in here of 90,000, if memory serves. And I know that's an estimate, and I don't know that was budgeted for in the budget. So is that something we will have to pull down through transformation, etc., etc.? I think it's the right thing to do, because I think for the Surrey Heath, that's what we need to do. My last point is, and I'm going to mention the LGR, so I apologise, Councillor Ashbury, but it's not going on from the normal train. One of the issues, I think, having just recently seen the consultation reference the LGR, unless you've got a degree, reading that form and trying to fill it out is so unwieldy that I think pretty much most of the residents, my wife said she was going to fill it in, and I said, go for it. I started trying to fill it in, and I know what's going on, and I gave up. I've got to be brutally honest, I gave up. So all I would ask is, if we do a consultation with the residents, we make sure that it is, and this is no disrespect to any of the residents, it is not in council speak, it is not in county speak, it is in resident speak, and they actually understand what they're being asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. We have Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Cope, then Councillor Hode, and then Councillor Gordon. Okay, so Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said earlier, I'm a parish councillor, and I strive to represent the public to this council and to the parish council too. When this council is merged into a huge unitary authority, parish councils will be the only viable local democratic link with the public. That's why I support this motion, which will be asking people in unparished areas if they consent to new parish councils, and then acting on the public's command. This is an expression of democratic values, liberal democratic values. We believe in devolving power to the closest practical level to the public. When I think about the casework I receive, the majority of it can be worked on either as a parish councillor or a borough councillor. So creating parish councils across Surrey Heath will replace the casework service that all members of this council provide for residents, and provide safe custodians of some local public assets like allotments, play parks and potentially community buildings. Another reason I support this motion can be summed up in one word, and it's a word that the Chief Executive just used, and it's in the report at least twice. That word is disaggregation, a very popular word with parishioners in Windlesham. This CGR explicitly offers up that option to the people of Windlesham. However, if the council passes this motion, it will only be opening the door. It will be up to the public to walk through it. This is a call to arms to everyone in Windlesham Village. You have told me that you do not consent to being governed by parish councillors that you did not elect. This is your opportunity, at last, to achieve our own parish council. You have the power if you decide to take part in the consultation and tell this council again. If you do not stand up at this time, then this opportunity will be lost and resources will continue to be controlled by councillors elected by other villages, and decisions will be taken by a majority of the mega parish, favouring the larger communities. People of Windlesham, raise your voices again and demand a village council when the consultation opens. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Cope.
Thank you. I'm going to be even woollier than Councillor Garrett just was, because I came to this meeting supporting 90% of what's in this report, but sceptical on the costings. But to be fair, the arguments put forward by Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Ashbury, particularly in respect of parish precepts, have changed my mind. And I think I will now support this. I just had one point of clarification around the costs, because I think it is important. At 7.3, it says we estimate a review will cost in the region of 90,000, understanding that's obviously a reflection of officer time. But at 7.1, it says other boroughs have budgeted between 160,000 and 300,000. Now, is it the case that 90,000 is just the initial cost of what we're proposing? But I doubt we'll get to the 90,000 point and then say, oh, actually, we're going to stop. So why are we looking at a figure of 90,000 when other boroughs are looking at figures between 160,000 and 300,000? I would just like a bit of clarity on that. And the second thing I would do is just to urge, I think it's already been mentioned, but I think the comms has to be really strong on this, because I can see an argument from a resident's point of view that we're just spending money creating another tier of politicians. I think we've really got to sell this and what it's going to mean. I think we all in this room are passionate about local democracy, and we need to really show that passion and communicate to residents the actual benefit that they're going to get, and they're not just going to get another tier of a talking shop. So I would urge that, and I'd also just like a bit of clarity on the costs, but I think I'm now in a position where I could support this, which I wasn't expecting.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. Councillor Hode.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's a very short one, and it's responding to Councillor Wheeler, who was perhaps of the opinion that really all this could do for parished areas was change the wording of Windlesham North and South to combine them. But in looking through on page 25 of the report, it does say we'll seek representations and views on any changing to the existing parishes, which may include consolidation, realignment or disaggregation of those parishes. So it does seem to me that a complete restructuring is up for grabs if that's what residents want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hode. I think Mr Stevens is going to come in.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hode. You found a section that I couldn't find when the question was asked earlier on. You're correct, that is the point. It's not just about whether or not there's a north-south or an amalgam of those two areas. Going back to Councillor Cope's question in relation to the costs. In the absence of any other costs, we worked out what we thought was the right level of resource and therefore the right cost to move forward with the community governance review in its entirety. The reason that you see two other figures in there is that there are other Surrey districts and boroughs that are going through a similar process at the moment, so we felt it was important to also highlight their figures. We don't believe that we will reach that cost value. We still think that the figure that we have in is reasonably accurate, but it does clearly depend on the level of consultation we undergo and actually where that consultation takes us next. So it's our best estimate.
Thank you, Mr Stevens. Councillor Gordon. Thank you.
I don't often comment in this chamber. I've been a parish councillor for many, many years and heavily involved in both CGR processes. And for the record, I'd like to say the speech made tonight by the leader and Councillor Ashby were fantastic. I support it wholeheartedly percent. I think we should all get behind it and support it. And excellent comments tonight, guys. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon, Councillor Quinn, and then Councillor Lee.
This will be similarly brief. I'm absolutely over the moon to see this report come to full council. This is a great piece of work. Thank you to the officers, thank you for the administration for bringing this forward. Sorry to see there's some councillors who always find something to moan about, but as a long-standing supporter for a Camberley Town Council, I'm really happy to see this. Of course, it will be a big town council, but the geography of the town means that obviously 20,000 electors in it, that will have to work. And local government is getting bigger. So this is not adding an extra tier of local government, as Councillor Cope said. We need to make sure we're communicating this right. There is no extra tier. In fact, we're losing a tier and gaining another one. So hopefully a lot cheaper tier as well. So this will hopefully lead to cost savings overall for residents in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn and Councillor Lee. Thank you.
I agree with Councillor Cope. Wow. Councillor Gordon, Councillor Garrett, Councillor Quinn, Councillor Wheeler, I think, does agree with me, and obviously Councillor Wilson. There was a commitment, I think, from you, Leader, a while back that we would try and put this onto an agenda. And I'd like to say a huge thank you for delivering on that commitment to put it on the agenda. I think Councillor Wilson's call to arms for Windlesham residents is really important because it's their opportunity for their voice to be heard and decisions to be made about their destiny in an impartial way, which is really, really important. But they won't get the change that they want unless they respond. So I absolutely 110% echo what Councillor Wilson said, which is that Windlesham residents, please, if you want change, you have to put forward your requirements for it as fast as possible. Looking to the wider borough, it's no secret that I was once a councillor in another area, Kingston. And if anyone doesn't know that, well, you're now up to speed. And we had something called neighbourhoods. And neighbourhoods were parts of a borough which were represented by those councillors at the unitary level. What that enabled was that things like planning and highways issues were able to be delegated down. And I'd like to see this as part of those foundations for the opportunity to delegate down to the appropriate level in the future, some of those responsibilities. And it's one to think about for the future. This is not just parishing. I think this is the opportunity to lay the foundations for something hugely innovative in unitary authority areas, to start taking away that problem that we're all desperately worried about, and our residents more so, which is that centralisation of power away from the appropriate level of scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Anybody else? Councillor MacDonald, would you like?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could, I would just like to ask for a couple of points of clarification from the officers. To be fair, I did alert the Chief Executive this might be coming. And they're nothing particularly outrageous, but I think it's useful for members to hear, so that's why I just want to put it forward. So, obviously cost has come up. I don't think that's any great surprise to anybody. There's couple of things there. One is the 90,000 figure is not on top of, it's a prioritisation as far as I understand it. But I do think there is a percentage of that might be money out the door to other parties. So a lot of it's officer time. Could you just give us your best guess, we won't hold you to it, 3 decimal places, your best guess as to what that percentage of the 90,000 that might be kind of extra and goes out the door?
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Mr Stevens, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. We were working on the basis that around about £70,000 of that would be officer resource. and then £20,000 would be external costs such as printing and other materials and general comms costs.
Thank you. I have a couple of, if it's okay, Mayor, could I keep going up and down on a couple of these just to save you getting stretching your legs too much? In terms of the, so we've obviously, we're saying we're starting the process today, or hope to start the process today after the members give it due consideration in a moment. Again, there's a number of, as far as I see it, there's a number of go and no-go points in this journey. Of that 90,000 of officer resource and money out the door, how much do we really think gets us to the net of it? How much gets us to the next go, no-go point? Again, it's a best guess. I don't know if it's a third, or a half. It's, I just thought I'd ask the question.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I have to say it's a very difficult question to answer, but I think with the 90,000 has been factored in across the approximate year of the review, so I would say it's possibly about a third of the cost, I would suggest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms Willis. You know when the question's getting really tough when you're answering them, yeah? Sorry, Mr Stevens, but we've got to line things up occasionally, haven't we? Actually, this one might be coming your way as well. I noticed in the report under 2.6 it mentions the Charter Trustees. Now, Ms Willis and I haven't managed to have our conversation we were going to have on the intricacies of that, but my understanding is that by approaching that, it gives us, in the unparished, and it mentions the unparished areas, that we might need to do that in order to maintain the rights and privileges, which I think is like a pseudo-mayor type thing, and be able to give, so nods to that. I assume the same would apply for the parish, the current parished areas of the borough, because it's not mentioned in the report. And again, I think it's important for the members to understand how we might get the benefit of the pseudo-mayor in the future.
Yes, thank you, Councillor MacDonald. So I have to admit, I'm not by any stretch an expert in charter trustees, and that is very much an area I think we need to look into. But I think the intention of charter trustees is that they are very much an interim solution whilst parish councils are actually formed. So I guess the suggestion is across the borough in the currently parished areas, as you allude to, there would be arrangements for that being, I suppose, disseminated to the existing parishes. But I would certainly admit that I have to look into that on a much more detailed basis.
Thank you, Ms Willis.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm able to move to my summing up. So thank you for that. Thank you for bearing with me. I just felt those points might be relevant for members in making their decisions. So thank you for your patience there. First of all, thank you very much for your support and your due diligence and consideration of this. Obviously, we've not voted yet, but some people have given some indications, and that's great to see. Whilst I would admit to being a little bit spiky with Councillor Wheeler earlier at the beginning of this session, she did raise some interesting points around the size of typical parish councils or community councils or whatever name we want to give them. At the end of the day, we will be driven by the data, and we will be driven by the responses of the public. And that may say different things in different parts of the borough, and then we'll have to try and reconcile that. What I would say is if we make this too complex, it won't happen. And that's why I go back to the keep it simple. Let's run this like a military operation. Maybe, Josh, you should be in charge of it. Like the band. Well, I've seen your band in action. Sorry, Councillor Thorne. I've seen your band in action, and it works like clockwork. So, yeah, we're going to have to be very, very disciplined in this. And the more complex we make it, and the more we go for perfection, I don't know why I'm looking behind me. The more we go for perfection, then it won't happen, and then the SIL money won't be protected. And listen, there's another discussion maybe on another day around SIL, but the balance we have currently will get sucked up into the unitary, and we will have no control of it. So that's also something we need to think about. What are the opportunities to add value to our residents and bring projects forward? So that would be one thing to consider, but thank you, Councillor Wheeler, for making that point, because it's completely correct. The average size is quite small. Councillor Cope, yep, absolutely on the money. You are quite often on the money, by the way. Absolutely on the money in terms of an excellent first chairing of ASR this week, so congratulations on breaking your duck there. But yeah, the comms side is going to be very, very important to us. So again, we'll look for support on that. And that's why in the proposal, as you've seen it, there's a working group. We didn't want another working group, but we think it makes sense in this case. And so I think it's appropriate that the leaders are there. I think, you know, Councillor Wheeler has a huge amount to add in this area. It is what I would say there is I think it's important we try and get a balance. So those of you that might sort of work out the numbers, you can see we have some non-parish, some parish people from that group. If you look at our borough as a whole, it's 2/3 kind of unparished and 1/3 parish, and I think that group should represent that. I've approached one of probably the lower political members of my group in comparison to, say, the Honourable Mr Wilson of Windlesham, which is Councillor Glaret, and she's been kind enough to say that she would be happy to be my appointee on that, and I've done that with a view to it being 2/3, 1/3, that the unparished areas are represented, and maybe I could just ask Councillor Garrett to think about any substitutes that we try and maintain that balance. It also brings a little bit of gender diversity, because we don't want to rut with each other, do we, blokes? So I think that covers off a couple of points there. I don't disagree with Councillor Ashbury, but I do think there's a bit more work to be done on this precept, because just the way that the council's accounts are done and the way custom and practice, we haven't maybe made such a distinction in terms of where the costs lie. And so when you know, Councillor White and others will recognise this, the true incremental cost is mainly the administration side. Grass is getting cut today, grass will be cut tomorrow, probably the same costs. Some people will say, oh, well, it's not the biggest size of contract, you'll be paying more for it. Yeah, but Joe or Josephine down the road might cut the cross with low overhead, and actually you end back in the same place. So there's a bit more work to be done there. It hasn't been the biggest priority for the finance team. Getting the accounts done has, and we'll progress that through, and when we've got more information to share, I'm sure the Chief Executive and the other strategy officers will ensure we share it. So more work to be done there. I just want to thank the officers, really. I mean, obviously Mr Stevens has worked hard on this, as Mrs Boateng. But I think the two people that I need to call out here are on the right-hand side. So Mr Hall and Miss Willis have worked very hard on this. And not only that, I think they have taken the challenge that I gave them, because I think I pretty much put the gauntlet down, and they have really risen to the challenge. And I think I have real confidence that we can do this, but not if we overcomplicate it. So thank you for your patience. I think I covered off everything I wanted to say. I recommend this motion to all of you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I would now like to move to the vote on the proposal. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And all those against? Any abstentions? Okay. Members, I declare the vote carried. Item 11, I have been advised that the Employment Committee wants to further consider the member and officer protocol at its next meeting. It has not therefore recommended that a revised version is adopted. I therefore propose that we defer this item to the next meeting. Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 12, questions from councillors. Members, I will remind you that we have new procedures that were agreed earlier this year. I would now like to invite members to ask questions of the leader, a portfolio holder, a committee chair, or me as mayor. If there is any confusion about who should receive the question, I will ask officers to advise. As usual, so everyone can have a chance, I will try to ensure all members have an opportunity to ask a first question before I invite you to ask a second question. Please also keep your introduction to your question as short as possible. Can I now have the first question from members? Councillor Garrett, then was it
Councillor Huff,
Councillor
Sarby Kane,
Councillor Thorne and Councillor
Thorne,
yeah, and
White, and then Rowlands.
And Councillor Rose.
And Thompson.
Councillor Thompson. Okay. Councillor.
I thought I'd get it in because I thought there might be a Tory. I think this is probably one for the leader. I'm going to ask him, and I know he may not want to do this, but I'm going to ask him to test his writing letter skills. I have in the chamber on a number of occasions spoke disrespectfully to county and highways about a particular daily trip I have, which is Bagshot. And actually, Councillor Lee made me think about this because he said in the chamber at least twice in last week, I know we complain about things, but we also need to make, when something's done well, we need to make sure we highlight it. As a daily traveller through Bagshot, since the roadworks have been done, and I know there was an issue with the roadworks being done, but actually even then it was a quicker trip, I can honestly say on a daily basis that trip is so much less stressful than, and I know speaking to people, that's what they say. So I would love you to write a letter to county thanking them for their wonderful work on the traffic lights at Bagshot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor. Sorry. Sure, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you. Happy to do so. My letters to county and the letters I think Councillor Ashby have sent to the portfolio holder at county have systematically been ignored, but I'm very happy to do what you suggest. I think we're up to more than a handful, but we're very happy to do that. So let's collaborate on the details there. I think the other thing just to say is we're just about to end into a period of gridlock in Windlesham for the next 4 weeks because of a poorly designed road closure there with no thought given to mitigating factors. So my advice is stay clear of Windlesham for the next 4 weeks starting on Monday, as all the traffic will be going down the high street, or whatever that street is called. Councillor Taylor or others might correct me, but I think you know the bit at the bottom of up downhill where you go out towards Church. Chertsey Road, that's the one. Chertsey Road. Got it then, eventually.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Huff.
Thank you, Mayor. There have been growing concerns recently regarding the number of wildfires, such as the big one on Hankley Common near Thursley last weekend, which destroyed over 8 hectares of heathland, which caused devastation to ground nesting birds and reptile habitats that experts say could take decades to recover. And just last night, near my house on the Old Dean, there was a fire that broke out on the common there. Fortunately, it was spotted very quickly by a member of the public who raised the alarm, and I want to thank the extremely swift response from several fire crews who I spoke to from across Surrey, some from Hampshire and Berkshire, who managed to bring it under control very quickly before it turned into something much more serious. So my question is, as most, if not all members here, will have areas of heathland which is home to protected habitats and endangered species in or near our wards, what more can be done to highlight and reduce the risk of wildfires and the devastation that they cause to wildlife habitats? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huff. Councillor MacDonald.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to members, it's me again. I'll take this one because I've spoken about this before, and I think it is a subject close to my heart. I think I've said about my wife's family house in Spain and how her members of her extended family have literally fought the flames at their doorstep. So this is increasingly risk here now in Surrey. We're seeing that. It's also in other parts of the UK. The west coast of Scotland, for some bizarre reason, keeps having very bad periods of wildfires. So it's something we need to get our heads around. How can we all do better? I think awareness is one thing, and sticking to the rules that are in place. So smokers beware. None of these portable barbecues. We just have to be extremely vigilant. And when you do see something, either out of hand or anything else, that needs to be reported in as soon as possible. those woods that we're talking about down in Thursley, I know reasonably well, because there's a great route from Frensham through to Elstead that cuts across it. Very nice part of the world, and it's very sad to see these things, especially the impact on the ground nesting birds and everything else that you highlighted in the protected species. Let's hope nature heals itself, but it will take time. We will have the opportunity, I'm sure the Chief Executive will be happy if we commit to looking at what more we can do on social media and everything else to keep putting out the Surrey Fire and Rescue stuff to our residents, and urge the rescue to do the same. So thank you for raising the question, Councillor Hoff. And one other area of particular concern, in this regard is we do appear to have some kind of arsonist that's doing stuff as well. I don't think I mentioned that in chamber before. I was lucky enough to meet with Inspector Ryan Scott the other day up at Lightwater Country Park, and he confirmed they're still on the hunt for that one. So if we can catch anybody that's doing it deliberately, let's put the full force of justice down on top of them, because it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor Sarby-Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for you, to the Mayor. I just wanted to say congratulations on your first full council meeting, and I'm sure everybody agreed. You've handled all of us very well, and the team behind you. Just a quick question to you. It's been really, really hot days, and we've had the heat wave. I hope you wasn't asked to wear your robes on a really, really hot day. If so, how did you manage? Because there wasn't any fires in Surrey Heath.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It is the uniform of the Mayor, so I did wear them for a couple of occasions, and they were fine. Thank you very much, though. Thank you. Councillor Thorne. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm mindful of the sensitivities that surround this topic and will be conscious of that in the way that I ask this question. A few weeks ago, I received an email from a resident of St Paul's outlining their concern about any possible or potential future involvement and or support by this council to Pride in Surrey, following the widely reported revelations of serious safeguarding issues and the horrendous crimes committed by their former chair, Stephen Ireland. Can I get assurances that this council will not be supporting Pride in Surrey going forward, and given the potential gap in support for LGBT plus residents this creates, is there anything this council is looking to do to fill that gap? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
First of all, thank you, Councillor Thorne, for the respectful way in which you've asked the question. I know you've been involved in a number of conversations around other sensitive topics, so we appreciate your approach there. The process of justice has obviously taken its course, and rightly so. And those responsible for these heinous crimes that I think we all, it's abhorrent to all of us, has now been held to account, and obviously the sentencing has been put down. My understanding is that this council has historically not had any significant relations with Surrey Pride in terms of funding and these sorts of things, because I'm aware of an email flying around from Surrey County Council. So we don't have any concerns in that regard. We also don't have any open concerns of another nature. What I think we need to be careful of here is this kind of guilt by association thing that's going on. I am a member of the Roman Catholic Church. There may be some of you here who may have gone into the odd Church of England church. I think I might know one or two of them. And there will be others that are non-believers and everything else. But my point there is that those organisations all have a fairly horrific record in dealing with some of these things. I don't think that makes me sit in the same camp as these people. And I think it's very, very important that we remember that the processes of justice are in place for a reason. So I would urge everybody to to resist that line of inquiry, not because anybody has anything to hide, very much the reverse. More we need to try and light into these issues, but because it's just not fair and it's not right. I don't mind saying to this audience that occasionally I scan the odd things that might be interesting to get involved with. And actually, one of the things that came up was the safeguarding body, the independent safeguarding body for the Catholic Church. My partner told me, don't touch it with a barge pole. I said, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to try and make it right. Somebody's got to hear the voice of the victims. Now, had the chat with the chair, an ex-colleague actually of our chief constable, very experienced public servant, and okay, my profile didn't fit, but I was happy to put myself forward because these things do need to be dealt with. I am conscious I've drifted there, Councillor Thorne. With the Mayor's forbearance, if there was an element of your question I didn't answer, then I'm very happy for you to repeat it and I'll have another go. But it's such an important topic to all of us, safeguarding. Another organisation I'm involved with had 62 actions on their safeguarding report. Actually, it wasn't a bad thing, it was about making it better. Yeah, they didn't have any major glaring holes, by the way, there were lots of niggly things. So it is a very important topic and we need to keep on top of it and shine a light into these areas. With the Mayor, if Councillor Thorne felt that I hadn't answered something, would you give him some forbearance, please?
Thank you, Mayor. It was just on, in a sense, the last part. Is there anything which this council can potentially do to support LGBT plus residents if there is now a gap in that service? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Thorne. I knew there was something I'd missed, you see, so that's why I wanted to try and give you the opportunity. I don't know is the answer. I think the point is valid. There are a lot of people that are feeling quite anxious and vulnerable at the moment and need support. So what I propose we do is we take that one away, have a think about it, and then maybe we come back to you within 5 working days with some better thought through than my ramblings. Thank you, Councillor Thorne.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. Councillor offer my sincerest apologies. I believe your hand went up before a couple of others. So thank you for your question now.
Okay, it's to do with parking, I'm afraid. I do apologise. It's that blooming woman coming out the machine in Camberley. Okay, I know she's changed the message, but the problem is she says to you now, thank you for your payment. You now have 20 minutes to leave the car park, which is fine if you've only been there an hour or a bit, whatever. I was there for nearly 2 hours the other day, and she said, I got to my car and I'd forgotten to do something. So I dashed back to the bank. I'd forgotten to do the bank thing. Got back to my car, got to the thing, couldn't get out because I was supposed to pay again. And the message is the same whether you park for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. It's misleading that you've only got 20 minutes left. Even if you've parked only for an hour and you go over the 20 minutes to leave, you've got to pay again. So, and even if you've only parked for 10 minutes and you go over the 20 minutes, you've got to pay again. And just doesn't seem right.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Ashbury. This one? Oh, was it the leader, Councillor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rise.
No, Councillor White was looking at me, and while I'm sympathetic with her, unfortunately, I don't have responsibility for car parks.
But, thank you, Mayor, but I am more than happy if you would like to answer Councillor White's question.
All future party chat.
First of all, with regards to the voice, I have discussed the voice with the parking manager. We did agree that getting the new contactless payment and the web-based payment system and making it all work and improving the fibre link between the 2 car parks so that we could run all of that was probably slightly more important than looking at the voice. So that's that. On the other point, I'm unclear of exactly what the issue is. Would it be possible for you to detail me exactly the issues that you're having? Because it sounds inconsistent, and I will then take that up with our parking services manager and we can look at it to see if there is something. But I will also point out something that our chief executive pointed out. You can actually drive to the barrier and tap to drive out without having to go to and from the machine now. That is a service that is now available, which would negate the need to wait 20 minutes, 10 minutes or whatever. So that service is available. So I'd encourage you to try that next time. But I will come back to you on the specific issue.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Councillor White, are you happy with that answer? Well, not, you'll take it up.
I feel that I didn't explain it properly enough, so I'll put it in an email to you. And yeah, it's just that being charged twice for being there for less than an hour when it only gives you 20 minutes to leave the car park. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Rowlands, we do just have...
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the leader and the chief executive on an excellent presentation this morning at the business breakfast. What was very disappointing, I've got to say, was the turnout. You get to recognise people from the business community, and I felt that something could have been done to actually get more of the people from our industrial estates being there. I don't know how you do that. It's easy for me to say that, but that's a challenge to us. What I also felt that it was an opportunity. There is an opportunity for rank and file people like members like ourselves to actually hear some of the information that was given at that conference, and possibly it argues the case for what used to be called, my old university days, a teach-in on some of the areas that we were talking about, because I think that probably is quite overdue. But generally, the substance of what was dealt with was very ably dealt with, and it was a real credit to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. So we've just got... Oh, would you like anybody to speak on that, Councillor?
Just to thank Councillor Rowlands for his praise. We'll take it and run with it. Thank you.
MacDonald and just Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This is going to be very different. I'm going to finish on something that's very different indeed. We've talked about a lot of different topics today. This topic won't affect a huge number of people in Surrey Heath, but it will affect some. And what I want to know is, does the leader agree with me, alongside our Liberal Democrat colleagues in Westminster, that UEFA's decision to demote Crystal Palace from the Europa League to the UEFA Conference League because of a nonsensical and inflexible interpretation of multi-club ownership rules is a gross injustice which not only impacts Crystal Palace supporters, but sets a dangerous precedent for football fans of all clubs more widely? Does he also agree that this is an affront to the sense of fair play that we expect and demand in sport, where hard-fought successes, and my colleague Councillor Cope knows all about the hard-fought successes that we had in winning the FA Cup this year, are rewarded appropriately and in line with expectations? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson and Councillor MacDonald. We do have a very short amount of time.
Sorry, I'll be very quick because Councillor Whitcroft was giving me the evil eye for the time of day as well. So, first of all, he's talking to the wrong person because I like odd-shaped balls rather than round balls. The second thing is that, yeah, we're a very inclusive council. We're very happy to welcome Crystal Palace supporters as well as Everton supporters, and even further niches like myself as Queen of the South. Yeah, it does seem a bit unfair what's going on. I did get my lad to explain it to me, although we did subsequently drift into conversation about how the Scottish players had managed to win 6 tries to 2 in the recent Lions game. And I hope everybody will also support me in giving our Lions the best possible opportunity to win, and our support at the weekend where Councillor Noble, I think, might be. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor MacDonald. That concludes the business of the meeting, and I would like to thank everyone for attending. Wish you all a very safe journey home. Thank you.
Please get standing. Please get standing.